Thanks for having me, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on the show, man. I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy travel schedule to come out here to sit down and do a chat. I know I've been seeing you around the community for a long time now, obviously, because Born Primitive is a pretty well-known brand. And, you know, a lot of the work that you've been doing in the community to not only, you know, make quality apparel for like folks that like to be active, but also like a lot of the stuff that you guys do to give back to the community as well, which is one of the things we're going to get into later on here in this podcast. But for those of you that don't know, Bear here, he's from the Midwest, played football at Yale for a while, which I didn't realize until today. It's kind of cool. You know, kind of humble beginnings, grew up like Midwest, you know, joined the Navy in what year?
2014.
2014.
Yeah.
Served for roughly 8 years in the SEAL teams. And, you know, while you were still in the teams, you were starting to develop your business, and then you transitioned out, and now you run Born Primitive, a pretty large, I would say, apparel chain, privately owned company. And you guys do all kinds of stuff from like active wear. You've got Born Primitive Tactical now, I've noticed. So you've got all kinds of different, like hitting all the different niches in the military veteran space, tactical space. And then you guys do a lot of philanthropy as well, heavily involved in philanthropy, which I think is great. A lot of folks in our community are doing similar things in their own way, in their own spaces. So, yeah, just for those of you that don't know, I figured that'd be kind of a good short, sweet touch point there, just so you guys have an idea of who we're talking to today. But yeah, again, I appreciate you flying out here. I know you've been all over the country. Where'd you come from?
I was in Salt Lake. Trying to close the deal.
Close the deal, yeah.
I think we did it. Yes,
yeah, okay. All right. Yeah, the art of the deal.
That's right, man. Yeah, I do it a little differently.
Yeah.
I'm learning.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're all learning. I'm learning. Dude, I'm still learning everything now, too, myself. So where did you grow up exactly? Like, what state?
Grew up in Indiana.
Indiana, no
Northwest
kidding.
corner, town called Valpo. Yeah, just typical Midwest upbringing, man. Sports, loving America.
Yeah,
the standard list there.
Yeah. Did you play football in high school or middle school or anything?
I did. Yeah, I grew up playing football and all kinds of sports. And
okay.
I was the youngest of. I had 3 brothers, so I got 2 older brothers, so I'm the youngest. So it was always hyper competitive, and you know what I mean. Like, when you're the little runt running around.
Are you bigger than your brothers? Now
I am now. Yeah, my middle brother, we're like the same size, but he's on Wall Street now, so he's gotten a little soft. So there was a transition point at some point where he didn't want to scrap anymore. But for a while there, I was taking it.
Yeah, that's funny. You know, it's funny. I've got 2 brothers, both younger. I'm the oldest, and my youngest brother is also the biggest of the 3 of us now. Kind of funny enough. I don't know if it was because we like made him tougher. I doubt it. We weren't really super hard on each other. I mean, we were hard on each other, not like, you know, in a mean way, but just like, you know, how brothers are, like you shit on each other all the time just because that's just kind of part of the nature of the beast. But I wanted to say, the one thing I noticed, like you were rocking the long surfer hair for a long time, and you recently trimmed it up. It looks clean, man.
Yeah, thanks. I had to get that out of my system, you know, from haircuts and shaves. So I was like, all right, I gotta like do this once.
Yeah, let it hang out for a little bit.
Then I became the guy. I never thought I'd be the guy rocking a man bun because like you realize like the functionality. Like when you're going to work out, I would have never thought like I'll be the guy with a man bun. Like you almost have to, because otherwise like you can't. You're doing some high intensity workout. It's literally everywhere. It's getting in your mouth. You can't breathe. So I finally was like, I'm that guy now that I would have made fun of like brutally a couple of years ago.
Yeah, that's so funny. Who else? There's another guy that used to be in college. Like he was a college. I think he might have been a quarterback. I'm not sure if he went to the Vikings or what. There was like a really well-known Clemson player. You know who I'm talking about?
Is it the guy that plays
big,
for
tall,
the Jags,
blonde dude?
Plays for the Jags now, right?
Maybe he does play for the Jaguars. Yeah, I can't remember his damn name, but that's what I think about. Like, he's got really long blonde hair, and I'm like, but he's also super jacked. And I always think about it, like, what kind of adversity must he face in the like weight room? You know what I mean? Like,
well, it was funny because I almost did the reserves when I got out.
Yeah,
and it sounded really cool. They have a part of the reserves called voluntary training unit where you don't actually get paid. And you kind of pick your trips, you know what I mean? You have to do so many days a year. And it sounded really good because I was like, hey, I don't need it for the money. I don't need healthcare. Like, I just want to be kind of still a part of this and still kind of keep the axe a little sharp, even though it's still like definitely the JV team for sure.
Yeah.
And, you know, a trip, you know, excuse to go with the boys for a weekend and, you know, do some house runs or get to the range or do a jump sustainment trip, whatever it was. Right. And I was like, you could pay me to do that. You know, I'll definitely do it for free.
Yeah.
But my last question was like, hey, if we're showing up like 2 or 3 times a year to train, like, do you guys enforce grooming standards? Like, if we're in the middle of nowhere, Mississippi, like at a gun range, like, can I show up? And he was like, oh yeah, unfortunately, like it's like grooming standards. And he lost me there. I was like, oh, I was like, I should have just asked that first. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I was like, I got like shoulder length hair right now, and I'm not cutting it anytime soon. So, you know, we get creative with the tactical slick back, but you can't slick that back. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
You're not
tough.
hiding that.
Yeah. It's tough to slick that back under a high cut or something.
Yeah. No,
It's gonna come out.
The ball cap can do a lot, as we know, as you're right on the edge of that. Hey, when's the last time you got a haircut in the hallway at wherever you're working? But yeah, that was my deal breaker. But maybe I'll revisit it. We'll see.
Yeah. Well, I know a lot of guys that are in like different parts of special operations that they all kind of feel very similarly about like hair length and being able to grow beards and stuff like that. Because it's like it's one of the things that people, like your average person, thinks like, okay, maybe if you're in the Green Berets or the SEALs or Delta or whatever SF MARSOC, they think, okay, well, those guys are allowed to grow beards, right? Like, just always allowed to grow beards. Well, they don't realize, like, no, you guys get forced to have grooming standards too. You may be able to kind of like skirt around it if you're like in country or something like that. That's obviously a little bit different if you're in an operational environment or you're doing some like low vis stuff or whatever. But in the rear, like if you're in Virginia or if you're in California or wherever, like you have to do the same stuff everybody else is doing.
Yeah, if you're in garrison, you're not really rolling up, to work with a beard. And then I would say hair, it's a little more lax because like I think that's just kind of like cultural, like got to try to have some good hair. But
good hair.
But then some guys will come in and you're like, dude, no chance. Like,
No chance.
The platoon chief's like, all right,
go get a haircut.
Like, I love it, but there's no way. Like if the command,
if the CG walks in right now,
if the command master chief like sees you in the troop space, like then it's his ass on the line. So that's definitely a thing. But we like to push it for sure.
Yeah, push the envelope. Yeah, no, I get it. I mean, and you kind of. I mean, I feel like a lot of you guys earned it, because like you went through like some of the most painful, arduous, painstaking training to get to a point where you are qualified to wear the trident, you know what I mean? Or whatever your emblem is, get to the teams, whatever. And so it's like, give him a little like extra, give him a whatever, give him a little space to stretch out, you know what I mean?
That's right.
But so you grew up in Indiana, you played football. When did you apply to college? Did you go to college straight out of high school or?
Yeah, I went straight out. That's when I started looking at the military. Like because I wanted to join the Navy out of high school.
Okay.
So I was in 8th grade when 9/11 happened. So like that was the spark of like, okay, I'm doing this. I was angry 8th grade boy at seeing what was happening on the TV, obviously on 9/11. So that was like an eighth grader's reaction to that event of like, it's game on. I'm going to go fight,
especially an American from the Midwest,
exactly,
pretty probably patriotic,
100%. Right. So that planted that seed. And then, that because I don't know if they still do this, but like the Navy, the recruiters would come to your lunch and they'd set up a little booth with a little keychain. Like the Marines would come, you know what I mean? So I would be the dork, like talking to them at lunch, you know what I mean? They're like, oh, and you're getting the BS from the recruiter who's like just lying to you about everything.
Yeah. They're feeding you whatever the recruiters are supposed to feed you.
So I was going to do that. And then, but football was starting to take off and I had good grades and my parents were like, hey, why don't you can go to an Ivy League school, get a great education. And if you still want to do this crazy SEAL thing, like you can always do it when you graduate. Yeah. And since I got to like continue playing football, I was like, all right, that's a fair deal. Like I don't think I would have just gone to college because I wanted to get after it. But like football, I still love the sport. So I was like, all right, well, if I can go play college ball, like that sounds fun.
Yeah.
So did that. And then, graduated there. And then I had to fix my shoulder, get a surgery on that. So I took a job with Red Bull and worked with them for a while, did marketing, which was awesome. I learned about brand marketing and all kinds of, they do it the best, better than anyone. And then eventually after some family pressure, I kind of gave up the SEAL thing for a minute, and I hung it up, but I couldn't kick it internally. I was married at the time, actually to Mallory, who co-founded Born Primitive with me, so we still run it together.
Oh wow,
have a great relationship. She's remarried, has a couple beautiful kids, and so as good of a eventual divorce as you can get. As a lot of guys in our line of work don't do great with that, but so we founded it together, and
when did you found it?
It's 3 months before I joined the Navy.
No kidding. So before you joined.
Horrible timing.
Oh, wow.
And I actually, because I was always a serial entrepreneur. Like I had a lawn mowing business growing up and landscaping business, and I was always hustling something.
Yeah.
And I actually had a business right before Born Primitive that ended up not working out. I raised a bunch of capital. We got a patent on something and went down the whole road to try it. I got leased a building and leased a bunch of equipment and it ended up not panning out like we thought it would.
Oh man.
So I guess I was dumb enough to not know any better, just turn around and started Born Primitive.
Right out the gate.
And I had a ship date. I was shipping in June and this was in March of 2014.
Did you have a SEAL contract?
I did. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but it was started just as a pair of compression shorts, because I was a big CrossFitter at the time. I had competed at the CrossFit Games, and I developed a pair of compression shorts that it's not innovative at all. But I took an old football girdle and cut out the quad pad, and I stitched it into the groin area, because when I was doing the snatch lift, with the wide grip, I was drilling my pubic bone. I was bruising it real bad, because we were training a heavy volume, so we were doing that movement 2 or 3 days a week and doing it to heavy percentages.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to create one of one for me, just like Jimmy rigged basically a pair of compression shorts.
Yeah.
So I went over to my neighbor's house. She was a seamstress. Me and her husband Arnie drank a gin and tonic. She broke out the sewing machine and she stitched the first prototype. So I wore that to the gym, and I was being silly, so I took my shorts off. So I was just basically snatching almost naked,
Yeah.
And so it's because we had a good little crew there, and the guys were like, "Dude, you should make those." And I was like, no one's gonna buy this. And they're like, "No, people in the Olympic lifting community would buy that." So
wow,
I did some research. I read a bunch of Olympic lifting forums. And I realized a lot of high level competitors actually had that problem. I just figured my technique was trash, or my torso to limb ratio was weird. So you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But there was an Olympian who fractured his pubic bone in competition. I was like, all right, well, if there's Olympians doing this, maybe and guys were putting neoprene knee sleeves down their singlets, or one guy would put a scrap of carpet down there to as a pad. And I was like, okay, this is actually kind of a thing.
A scrap of carpet?
Yeah, a little piece of carpet he'd put down there,
just to protect his pubic bone.
Yes, in his singlet, and then he'd approach the platform and hit the lift.
Wow.
So I was like, all right. And I knew nothing about product development. So I read a bunch of books on supply chain and this and that. And long story short, ended up getting 200 units made. And that was our first order, and then I went to OCS right after that.
Jesus.
And that was the beginning. It was meant to just be a product, not like a business.
That's wild. So you started this whole thing before you even joined.
Yeah,
I had no idea. I thought you were starting it towards the latter part of your years in.
Yeah. So then at OCS, I had a buddy there ahead of me, another spec war candidate, and he said, "Hey, if you want your phone, try to be the class leader, because those are the class leader, and then the second in charge. I don't even remember what we called it, the vice president or something.
Yeah.
You're the only two people in the whole class to get your phone during boot camp."
Oh wow!
So in the first day, they're like, "Who wants to be class leader?" You get to give a 1 minute speech to the whole group of people you just met 20 seconds
who
ago.
don't know you at all.
Exactly.
Yeah,
so I raised my hand because I was like, I need my phone because I need to be able to do business. Yes. So I'm sure you can relate to this, right?
Dude,
so I stood up, gave my 1 minute spiel for whatever reason. The class voted for me, so I got my phone.
Did you feel like that was a good speech?
I have no idea what I said. Yeah,
I can't remember what
killed
I
it. Killed it. Yeah,
knocked it out of the park.
Standing ovation in our glow belts and Nalgene's.
Oh man,
and stupid hair, I guess shaved heads. But
where was boot camp? Was it Michigan still?
No, so for Navy OCS, it's in Newport, Rhode Island.
Newport, Rhode Island,
yeah, which is actually an awesome place.
Okay,
kind of ironic, you're on this island and there's all these people out having a good time in town, and you're in hell.
Yeah,
but, yeah, you know how that goes.
It's two different worlds.
Yeah, well, there's literally a bridge that goes across, so you're just it's almost just I just need, if I could just run across this bridge, I could escape.
Do people ever try to escape?
Oh yeah, I think so. I mean, it's
people they crack and they run away.
Yeah. But so that was kind of cool because then every night I would get on email and I would interact with Mallory, my wife, and we would talk business, and I'd be emailing suppliers, and my roommate's there shining his boots and getting all this stuff prepped, and I'm like more worried about it was like supplier emails and like the website, and I remember we had our first product recall because after we sold the first 200 units, we doubled down and ordered 500. But when they did the 500 unit order, they did it wrong, and we didn't know. Mal and I were dealing with a quality control issue on our second ever order, and I'm at OCS, getting 4 hours of sleep, doing all the
I can't imagine.
Yeah, it was.
I can't imagine being at OCS having to deal with that.
And it's like you look back and you're like, man, how did I do that? But you realize at the time, you're much younger. Yeah. Your gas tank is full. You know what I mean? And you're like almost dumb enough to not know any better. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like now I'm looking back, I'm like, man, that sounds super stressful.
That sounds awful. That sounds awful, man.
You got to get all your stuff prepped and shine your boots and this. And I'm like, trying to figure out how we're going to, reach out to 500 customers to let them know, hey, the shorts you just ordered might not work.
Yeah.
Because what was happening is like when people would put it in the dryer, the pad would like start to fall off, like because the adhesive, they used like a different adhesive.
Oh.
So when you get them, we didn't realize they were wrong. You know what I mean? Because they looked the same. So Mallory, like she was the one receiving like the bulk shipment, was like, oh yeah, they're good to go. And like we started taking orders, and then that first person that like threw them in the dryer hit us up and was like, the pad is crumbling, and we're like, no.
Where were you storing all this stuff?
In our house.
In your house?
Yeah. So
kidding.
Born Prim is about 11 years old now. What a lot of people don't realize, the first 5.5 years was just Mallory and I.
Yeah.
And I'm saying that because the product development technically started in like late 2012.
Okay.
So like I'm using that as our start date, not our like incorporate. But even if like for the day we became a company, it was still like 3.5-4 years.
Yeah.
But it was just me and her, and it took over the whole house. So like every guest room had boxes to the ceiling.
Oh, of course.
And then our garage was our fulfillment center.
That's like all my buddies who do Amazon or eBay like that.
And of course, like she'd be like, hey, I need like we need to restock the women's extra small, whatever bra. And like, I'd go up to like the furnace room above the garage, and there literally were boxes to the ceiling, and it'd be like the back left box, like the sixth one down, all these boxes, like 50 pounds. So I'd be like literally surfing across boxes and then like sliding them one over to get to the other one just to get like a 5-pack to restock, our like front stock in the garage. But that was what we did. That's what you had to do.
Yeah,
you know
dude.
I
tell you what, one of the things people they underestimate. They look at a lot of these big businesses out there, and they're like, think, oh man, that guy must have had it just so easy. Like you look at Jeff Bezos, like how he started, like starting off with books. Imagine, like most people, you start with no team because you don't have any money to pay anybody. So you're doing it all by yourself, or you're doing it with your spouse, like you, or you're doing it with maybe your friend or something that you went into business with. And it is hard. It is a brutally, like grueling, viscerally hard thing, and like you went from that to now you've got warehouses that you have people that work in warehousing that manage your product instead of you having to go into that bedroom and like surf through boxes. Is it crazy to like see, like to think back to like what you had to do at the time to like where you're at now?
It is. I think I don't do a very good job of reflecting on that because I'm still in the arena. Like, you know what I mean? So like,
I know what you mean. Yeah.
Mal and I have had some really big wins over the years, and like, like milestones that should have been celebrated, like at least a bottle of champagne, or like, like at least maybe like a cool gift I should have got her, or she should, like we should have recognized some of these moments but we're so competitive.
Yeah.
It was like immediately on to the next thing. You know what I mean? Like I remember I texted her once about a really cool milestone we had achieved, and I just happened to stumble across it like on Shopify. Like I crunched a few numbers. I'm like, holy shit, like that just happened. Yeah. And I remember I texted her, and she was like, like said something like, oh, that's awesome. And then immediately followed up with a question like, hey, did you see that, like the thing on the website, like we need to change that font or whatever, like it was right back to work, which in a way I love, but it's in a way not a great way to live long-term, because like you do have to enjoy the moment a little bit too.
I'm so bad about that too, man.
Yeah, so you can relate, I think when you're type A, it's always like, all right, what's the next thing I need to conquer?
Or I need to do better. Yeah. I'm not doing good enough. Yes. Or I look at other people that are more successful than me. I'm like, they are doing so good right now. I need to get better. I need to start working towards that. I'm not good enough. I'm not working hard enough. I need to work harder. Or like, this really could have been better. And then you just start focusing all like the nitty gritty, like what the problems you might perceive are. Yeah, I have a real hard time of like taking a second to just like be, like, wow, we've come a long way. Because people will tell me sometimes, folks that I've talked to, like, they're like, man, you're crushing it or whatever, and I'm sure you probably have the same thing. And I'm like, man, I feel like I haven't done anything. I feel like I haven't accomplished anything. I feel like I am still at square one every day.
Yeah.
And maybe that's what keeps me hungry. I don't know. Definitely not healthy to stay in that mindset all the time. You gotta, like you said, you gotta take a second to be grateful for like your successes and celebrate your small wins, even if they are small, because man, if you don't, I'll just stay sucked into this black hole of I'm not doing good enough. Everything sucks, and I need to work harder.
Yeah, no, dude, so well put. And I do think it is a superpower in a way, because it does in a sick way, right? But it does motivate you. Yeah. And one thing I'll say about that, man, because I know you're still on your journey too, is run your own race. Yeah. I still do this, but I'm much better about it now. But in the early days, I was always comparing ourselves to other brands, and I was so competitive, and I would get so fired up when I would see like other brands do stuff that maybe it was more innovative, or like maybe they had a really cool marketing campaign. I'm like, man, we should have, like, that's what we need to get to. Yeah. Or in our case, a lot of the brands we were competing with were starting to raise a bunch of capital. So they were going private equity and getting, $20-30 million investments that are saying, hey, here's a bunch of growth capital. And then they're able to go sponsor the CrossFit Games, and they're able to do this. And we were all born in like at the same time. Yeah. And, these guys are full-time, all they're doing is their business. And I'm a freaking active duty SEAL trying to run it with my, wife at the time. You know what I mean? Like side hustle, no capital. We have to bootstrap the whole thing. So like I had this like underdog complex of like, you know what I mean? But it worked out, man. 'Cause now a lot of these people, and I'm not going to name them, own 0.5% of their companies. They've had horrible, experiences with private equity. They might have created a little bit of liquidity for their family and wealth, but like, you know what I mean? At the cost of now, like the thing you built, like you don't own anymore, and you now have a boss. Right?
See, that sucks. I don't want a boss, bro. Yeah. I want to be my own boss. Like after where I'm at right now, like you're talking about, when I am transitioning, I want to be my own boss for the rest of my life. Yeah. I love working with people, cool with that, but I love being able to be like, it's on you, and nobody else is telling me like you need to do this. Like, no, I'll tell myself what I need to do. Like, I'd much rather do that, and I'm more intrinsically motivated to work harder for myself than I am for somebody else above me. Anyway, you know what I mean? Exactly. Just naturally, because like you're gonna work harder for yourself if it's for you and your family and it's your own thing, than if like if you're working flipping burgers at McDonald's. You know what I mean? Totally. Unless you if you own the McDonald's, you're gonna be busting your ass in there flipping the shit out of those burgers. But but if it's like somebody else's, and you're like, why would I want to work harder for that? I mean, that's just one example, like in the private sector anyway. But I can't imagine doing that while also being an active SEAL, like the level of like the high intensity rotation rates, like deployments, workups, the training, like the early mornings to do all the stuff that you have to do that. I can't imagine doing that and also running a business and trying to scale constantly, trying to build constantly, trying to find people who are interested in the product, marketing, and doing all this stuff on your own while you're still trying to build a team and stuff. Like, when did you like, how many years were you into the Navy before you hired your first employee?
I think our first actual employee salaried was July of 2017. So that would have been 3 years and 3 months. Okay. And that was like our finally, like, okay, we have to outsource this because I can't do this anymore. It was definitely a struggle there in the beginning. And like, the good thing about Mal's, like, she had zero sympathy for me and what I was doing in my military life. Zero sympathy, which is what I needed. So like I still joke about this, but because we were born in the CrossFit space. So our early marketing plan was basically we would just go to every CrossFit event we could and set up a little like 10x10 booth and like sling t-shirts and hoodies and stuff. Like, that was, for the first 4 years, that was basically our marketing plan. Wow. But we were ruthless. Like, we would just go to everything, and like every weekend was taken. So, when I was in SEAL training for the first like month, you're not really allowed to, like, if I think until Hell Week, you're not allowed to leave the compound, if I remember it right. And then after Hell Week, you can leave on the weekends. So she started booking us for like weekend events. So we'd be vendors there. Oh, and I'd limp through the door on Friday because I lived off base with her because I was married. I was able to, I literally, would hobble through the door, Friday at like, 9 o'clock after like however many hours we just worked that week. Yeah. And she'd be like, we got to pack the Jeep. Like, we got an event in Anaheim tomorrow. We got to be set up by 6 a.m. Oh, and I'd be like, God, all my buddies are like going to get massages and getting, deep tissue and all like stretching and like maybe go and practice the O course if they're still like, and like doing things that are specific to just, all right, I'm in one of the hardest trainings on the planet. Like I need to focus on just completing that. Yeah. And Mal's like, oh, you got to pack the Jeep. We got to go to Anaheim tomorrow for a CrossFit event. So I have to take that hat off and put on my, business hat and then go stand on my feet at a booth all day long in 80-degree heat, trying to sell T-shirts to people at a CrossFit event that has 100 people there. You know what I mean? And then we'd pack the Jeep, drive back, and then we'd have to re-inventory everything. And you have a lot of like stuff you got to do on the weekends to prep your gear. Like you got to sharpen your dive knife and you got to repaint your helmet. And all these things that are meant to take time because they want you stressed, and they would use it to measure attention to detail. Like you got to re-stencil your helmet and put these little, and so they would inspect all that next week. So most of the guys, like a lot of your weekend, you're spent like redoing your helmet and sharpening your knife. And I remember we're coming back from Anaheim and we're in the Jeep and Mal's driving and I'm trying to do my helmet with tweezers because you gotta stencil your name, so you use tweezers and we're hitting bumps and like the A is crooked and it was already like stuck on there. I'm like. It. Like I'm just gonna get my ass beat on Monday. You know what I mean? So like we go to like our inspection, whatever it was Monday morning, and they see like it, just get my ass beat, and I'm just kind of laughing like, yeah, I totally would have passed, but if they didn't know I was bouncing around in a Jeep Rubicon on the 5 trying to like do my helmet when you know what I mean? Like it should be on the table, like super neat, like you got to get it just right, you know. So those are the stories I look back and laugh. Of like, thank God I was dumb enough to not know any better of how nuts that was. You know what I mean?
It's just so crazy to think back to, dude. I can't even imagine like the level of stress and pressure you're under. And then you have to kind of like, you have to compartmentalize it, I would imagine, because you're like, okay, I know I've got all this stuff that has to get done and I'm going to figure out a way to get it done, but I have to do this right now because this is like my business and my livelihood. And, did you know at the time that you were planning on rolling into that when you like post service?
No, I mean there was no plan, dude. It was just like, again, there was not like a big vision. It was just we were just so competitive that we just wanted to compete in that space. So like, that was really the only goal was in the moment was just to compete. And since we didn't have any outside capital or anything, we bootstrapped everything. The only way to do it was like, all right, well, one thing that doesn't cost anything is effort. You know what I mean? So we're just going to outwork everyone. We're going to go to every event. We're going to use our own vehicle. We're going to use our own house. We're not going to hire employees. Mal, when I was like in training, to her credit, she was running all the operations. So she had been a dental hygienist with no business experience and just hung that up and was like, all right, I'm going all in on this with you. You know what I mean? So
did she see the potential then?
Yeah, well, and she had to learn everything, because in the beginning, as you know, like you're everything. You're the accountant, you're the supply chain officer, you're the marketing manager, you're this. Like you literally have to do everything. Yeah. And even legal counsel. There was some potential lawsuits that I had to fight off that I had to I had to read about case law so I could have calls with these lawyers and tell them why they didn't have a case. Like you literally do everything, literally. You know what I mean?
Man.
Yeah. I remember we had made our first jean short and we had long story short, they had the suppliers had stitched a pattern on the back pocket. It was just a sample. And I didn't realize stitching can be trademarked. I didn't know this, I'm still new to the game. Bro. So American Eagle sent us a letter that they were suing us. And this was we're 4 years in. So that was really scary.
American Eagle.
Yes. And to their credit, we resolved it. But I broke out my old, I took a pre-law class freshman year at Yale with Bob Dunn. And I remembered some of that class. So I broke up my old notes because, we didn't have ChatGPT at this time. Otherwise I would just ChatGPT.
Yeah. What do I need to do?
And I found the notes and I found case law for this, kind of what they were accusing us of, and I was ready to go. So I remember I had a call with them. There were 3 partners on the call. I'm active duty. So I think I was on a deployment or I was on a training trip. And
oh my God.
And I said, all right, you guys all bill $1,000 an hour to your client plus. How many years combined do you guys have in law? And it was they each had 20 plus years. All right, so you guys have 70 years combined. I have 0. Jesus. You guys are billing your client $3,000 an hour right now because you guys are on a call. You're trying to go after an active duty guy who doesn't know what he's doing. There was no harm on this. It was one sample. We never actually made it. And I started citing a bunch of case law. And they're like, where the hell did this guy come from? You know what I mean? I said, you guys know this is bullshit. You're trying to intimidate us. There's not if you want to try to sue an active duty guy, bring it on.
Yeah.
But like, you guys aren't going to impress me in your New York office, like with your 70 years of law, blah, 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 because you know I'm right and you're wrong. But I said, here's what I want to do. I said, we do like to give back here. I do acknowledge it was a mistake. We should not have stitched that pattern. I did not know about trademark law that you could, yada, yada. So like, I want to own that we actually like messed up on our end. I'm not just trying to complete. Yeah. So I said, hey, let's each donate $5,000 to a charity of your choice. So find one that American Eagle supports, and we'll match it up to $5,000, and let's shake hands and like we'll learn from this. Yeah. And they were like, okay, well, that's not what we were expecting, but we'll go back to the client. And then like they came back and were like, yeah, that's agreeable. So like we just cut a check to a charity that they, you know what I mean? But when you're the only guy, these are the things you got to do, man. Because now obviously I got lawyers, and I'll say, hey, deal with this. Yeah, you know what I mean?
That's wild. So you dealt with that entire thing.
Oh, and Mal was so stressed because she thought it was like going to end the company. Because I think at the time we had not, by the time we had probably 10 employees by then. So it was starting to become like a little bit of a thing. We had a warehouse by then, and she was like, because it was her mistake, because she didn't call out like with the supplier, like, hey, because we had sent them a sample. We said, hey, we like the fit on this, but we want to use a different fabric. So just like, mimic their fit. So we sent them a pair of American Eagle shorts. But they like stitched the pattern because they like they overdid it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they overcomplex.
Yes. Yeah. So we're like, it was a misunderstanding. But Mal was like beside herself because she was like, did I just like end the company with my one mistake? And I was like, no, I got this. But then I had
that's a miracle.
I was kind of panicking, but I obviously was trying to keep it together.
Yeah,
but,
you're trying to like maintain self-control. Yeah.
So I just give that as like one of the million examples I could give of like when you are the founder, and it's just a couple people, like you literally have to do you have to wear every hat. Yeah. And you're not a subject matter expert on any of them. Yeah. Right. You become decent at all of them, but you're never actually a master of any of it. Yeah. Like for me, marketing was probably the thing I was best at because of my Red Bull background. Yeah. But all the other stuff, it's like, shit, I don't know about anything about accounting. Well, I guess I better pick up this book and read how to do a P&L. You know what I mean? Not that we really even ever had that, but you see what I'm saying? Yeah. Yeah. So
that's a lot, dude. Juggling all that while being active at the same time. What was your, I don't know if I asked, like the SEAL teams, like you've got different types of MOSs within the SEAL teams, correct? Kind of like Green Berets?
Not exactly. So you all have the same, rate, but like within a platoon, guys will go to different schools to get different specialties. Okay. Right. So typically like in a platoon, let's say there's 18 to 20 guys, like they would want to make sure, all right, we have so many medics, so many snipers, so many comms guys. So guys would go to those schools to get the qual. So by the time you platooned up, like you had like a rep, you were fully capable as a platoon.
Okay,
you know what
so
I mean?
You're balanced and stuff.
Yeah. But some guys would get multiple. So like, a guy might go to be a breacher, his first platoon, and then a second platoon might go to sniper school. So like he technically has both quals, but like he would likely do his most recent qual like in the platoon. So like maybe he was a breacher, but he's not going to be like the lead breacher when he did breacher school like 3 pumps ago. You know what I mean?
Makes sense.
So that's typically kind of how it works. And then, our guys, I don't know if they still do it, but, go get the 18 Delta qual with the Army. And they would do that typically before they show up to a platoon. So that would be kind of an outlier where they go out of the system to go get like obviously that's a really good qual. The 18 Delta guys.
Yeah. What is the 18 Delta?
That's just the medic.
Medic. Yeah. So you guys go to the same medical course?
I think it's the same one as the SF guys go to.
It's like a 2-year course, isn't it?
I don't know how long it is, but it's definitely a no shitter.
Yeah. I heard that's the hardest. That's the hardest MOS in the 18 series for like Green Berets. Yeah,
it sounds super stressful, and like their curriculum's hard, and they're doing like obviously live tissue stuff. And I mean, it's the real deal. And then I think they end up sending them to do like at a ER trauma unit. They'll go to like some city for like 4 months and do like
Chicago or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think my buddy was up in like, I think it was Flint, Michigan, and he was like, it was like, wow, they would like respond to these like, things in the city, and like there still would be shooting going on, and they're like trying to like,
that's
like
wild
triage, and there's like guys are still shooting and shit. He loved it. He's like, that's awesome. I was like, well, I don't think you're normal, but okay.
That's about as close to the live thing as you're going to get, is going up to like Michigan or Chicago or something like that, and like doing some live tissue, like triaging of patients and treating patients. Because I mean, like that's about as close as you're going to get to a battlefield in the States.
Well, he had told me he started carrying, and then they found out and like, hey, you can't do that. And he's like, well, what if we're in the freaking gunfight? Like, we're gonna be able to defend. And they're like,
he started carrying.
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah. He's like, obviously, he's an Indiana guy too. Like, this is kind of how we roll, man. You know what I mean? Like,
hey, man, I'm trying to be strapped. I'm not trying to get clapped. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
So, that's hilarious, man. Yeah, I got a buddy who's who I actually talked to a couple weeks ago, who was a 18 Delta, and I think he was telling me that the course is 2 years long. It's like the longest course out of every Green Beret, like military occupational specialty within the 18 series, and so I didn't realize that the Navy was sending SEALs to go to that course.
Well, they were, and I think as I was in, there was a separate one. I don't remember the name of it. I'm dating myself here because I think the Navy wanted to be able to sustain itself on like making sure enough guys get through and like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I don't know where that panned out because I think like the 18 Delta course was so well done that like you can try to recreate it, but like but I think the Army would only give a certain amount of spots.
Yeah.
So I think the fact that we were like kind of, like under that limitation, they're like, hey, well, shit, let's just make our own course. So some guys started getting that qual, and then like the real 18 Deltas would like bust their balls. Like, oh, you got like the JV version.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And to some extent, I think it was watered down a little bit. So I think there was some validity there. So I don't know what they're doing now. I could hit the guys up, but yeah, so you had all those typical quals, but then, guys would, every platoon might get a different one. And so that's typically how it works.
What was your specialty for the periods of time that you were in mostly?
So I was an officer, so we don't get all the cool shit.
Oh, you don't get to go to all those cool courses?
No. So that was like the one thing, man. I definitely, if I could have done it again, I would have absolutely been enlisted. Like I had a great time, had a great experience. But like when I was thinking about going in, I was a middle linebacker, like captain of the like you're the kind of guy calling the shots on defense if they run in motion and you got to change the coverage. Like I was always that guy, like, like kind of, and so I thought like the platoon, the platoon commander would be that guy when in reality, it's really the platoon chief. You know what I mean? And a lot of guys, maybe in the Marines, maybe it's a little bit differently, but the SEA is really the guy running the tactical piece in any situation. Yeah. And the GFC, the ground force commander, is really just the up and out, which is not the fun stuff. You know what I mean?
So you're like on the radio and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's the reality. I mean, the radio is your primary weapon, man. You know what I mean? And it's an important job, obviously, especially, of course, if something were to go south and you got to spin up like casts and like, get the medevac spun up and like there's like it's definitely like it's not like, oh, that guy's just like not doing anything, but the actual like if you want to do the job, like the enlisted is the way to go for sure.
Yeah, so where the rubber meets the road.
Yeah. So those guys are obviously going to the sniper and the breacher schools and all that, and they're the meat eaters, man. Yeah. So but I got lucky in my first platoon. My platoon chief was basically like, hey, I basically want you to be an E5 for the next 2 years because you need to learn the craft, which I really respected because I was like, I think that's how it should be. Yeah. Because a lot of, the other officers, depending on what their like leadership wanted, they were doing all officer type shit. So like PowerPoints and like, or maybe like they'd be like the RTO to the platoon commander, like running the radio for him. Like, you know what I mean? So you're literally like relaying comms, like how
as an LTJG.
Yeah. You'd probably be like a JG at that time. Yeah. You know what I mean? So where my pro dev was more, hey, here's the Mark 48. Like you're going to be an AW gunner because you need to learn the craft and you're going to, if we're breaching, you're going to carry a torch or a quickie saw or whatever because like you need to learn what the boys do because eventually you're going to be running the boys. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, good,
which was awesome.
Put you in perspective, yes. Because if you've done the things that they're actively doing, you'll have a better understanding of like how those things work and how to best employ them. I feel like. Yeah,
and I think it's also a respect thing too, right? Like if you're carrying the 48 and you get 500 rounds at 7.62 and the gun I think is 24 pounds and you're keeping up with the guy with the M4, who's got 60 less pounds and you're like, all right on, this dude has earned his keep. And because carrying the belt fed is a shitty job. So it was good to like not skip that step. Yeah, you know what I mean. And I also had a blast. Like that's what I wanted to be doing. You know what I mean? Because I was a big dude. I was like, give me the fucking belt fed.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Who doesn't like a belt fed machine gun, dude?
Well, I thought I was so fucking cool. I remember one time we were getting ready to do like a training exercise, and I think we were about to do night runs. And we had done the day runs and, usually wait for the sun to go down and, get your nods on and everything. And I had like my belt fed and I was smoking like what are those little Swisher cigars? Like like at the gas station, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I had cut the sleeves off of my shirt and I'm smoking a cigar with my belt fed. And my platoon chief says, what the f*** What are you doing?
He's like, I'm in Nam, bro.
What do you think? This is like platoon? Like, I was like, it was so funny. And I was like, oh, yeah, I got to check myself. Like,
yeah, you're like, man, I'm like, Charlie Sheen right now. Leave me alone, senior chief. Yeah. What were they? Were they just chiefs or senior chiefs?
Yeah,
or?
the platoon chief's E7 chief.
E7, okay.
Yeah, and then typically your troop chief is a E8.
Okay.
Yeah, but fond memories, man. We had a really good time, and I definitely miss that shit for sure. And the shenanigans that of course come with it.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, when you get that close with a bunch of guys, you become like a bunch of brothers. It's like family. Yeah. It's like having your family members. Yeah. The Mark 48, isn't that an FN America belt-fed weapon?
I don't know.
I want to say it is because I think that's what, like, I'm not super familiar with the Mark 48, but I think that it's very similar. Was it 5.56?
No, so the Mark 48 is 7.62.
It's 7.62.
And the Mark 46 is the 5.56 equivalent, which is also a sick. I mean, the Mark 46 is awesome.
Okay. So I think FN America makes those, I want to say, because they make the M240 and they also make the M249 saw, which are basically like the non-special operations version of what you just said. I think. And so I think that they make those as well. I went to Columbia, South Carolina in May to tour their facility, and they showed me the Mark 48 and what was the other one?
Mark 46.
Mark 46.
Yeah.
I think they showed us those, but I'd never seen them. They look if you're just like a regular dude like myself and you look at it, it's hard to really tell the difference between the two. I think they might be a little bit shorter barrels or maybe a little bit structured a little bit differently. But I mean, obviously, like FN makes some great weapons for the military in general. I mean, they make the M27 IAR, they make the Mark 19, they make 50 cals, they make M16s, they make M4s, they make. I mean, the scars. Did you ever get to employ scars?
Bit, yeah, not much. Yeah,
not much.
The 7.62, but like I think by then it was kind of like it was not really being used as much.
Not being used as much. Yeah, I know. Well, the first time I'd ever shot a scar, actually, funny enough, I borrowed a SEAL scar.
Okay. Yeah.
Funny enough, we were out at a range in Syria, and like actually, short story. These two guys, awesome dudes, actually asked them to promote me to first lieutenant while we were in Syria because I was like, well, there's no Marines out here, so you guys want to like pin me first lieutenant? They're like, yeah, let's do it, man. I was like, can we go shoot guns too? They're like, yeah, let's do it.
Nice.
Man. Super cool guys, man. And that was the first time I ever shot a scar at this little tiny range up in the eastern Syria security area. And the 7.62 version's got quite some kick to it.
Oh, it does. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, it kicked like a mule, man.
Yeah. I want to get one.
It looks cool. Like how, with like it's like composite and like you know what I mean. Yeah, it's a cool looking weapon.
Different than it's much different than using an M4. Because obviously for most of my career I'd carried an M16 or an M4, just because. When you first got to the fleet, at least at the time, like you were the junior dudes always got the M16s. They get the big boomsticks, and then all the senior guys had the smaller rifles. And M4s were a little bit easier to fit in trucks because I was in a mounted infantry platoon when I first started out.
Gotcha.
And so that was a lot easier to just like stick down in the side of your door, while you're down there. Because sticking an M16 down there is a much more big pain in the ass. Also, it's smaller, so it fits in the turret.
Is that a 16-inch barrel on that, or?
On the M16, I think it's a 16-inch. Okay. It might be
ballpark.
The M4 might be ballpark. Yeah. The M4 might be a little bit less. I think the M16 is technically supposed to be a little bit more accurate because the barrel's longer. It's supposed to be easier to qual with, but I always preferred the M4 just because it was just a little bit shorter and easier to maneuver, and I could like swing it around. You know what I mean? Just less of a pain in the ass, but. Yeah. Anyway, so you enjoyed your time with a belt-fed weapon. I enjoyed my time with belt-fed weapons as well. I'm still a big fan of belt-fed belt. I mean, one of my goals in my life is I would love to own my own belt-fed machine gun and just cool. Be able to take it out on a range out in the middle of the country and just fire off some belts once in a while if I've got some money for it or whatever.
Yeah, it's a little different when Uncle Sam's not paying for the ammo, right?
Yeah. It's a little different if you're footing the bill for sure,
exactly.
But it still doesn't change the fact that I've always loved belt-fed machine guns from the day I picked it up. Although I will say, just for transparency, I sucked ass at shooting belt-fed machine guns when I first started because I was like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do to be accurate. It's an area fire weapon. I don't understand how. Like I'd never shot a machine gun before. It was my seniors were like, stop sucking so bad. I'm like, I've never done this before. I'm trying to learn, but you get better like everything else with practice. And then you learn, how to apply shoulder pressure and
really lean into it.
Yeah,
you gotta
really lean into
the
it,
gun
yeah.
because it's going to kick you back. You have to it's body position is a big deal too. Yeah.
Yeah, even body position, whether you're shooting on bipods or you're shooting on a tripod or you're shooting on a scissor mount or you're shooting on like a Mark 35 or a Mark 93 on a truck, a gun truck or whatever. But definitely always enjoyed that. That's like a super therapeutic thing. I don't know what it is about it. It's just like therapeutic. But did you ever get an opportunity to deploy with the teams?
Yeah. No, I did a couple deployments.
Okay.
But I wouldn't say problem because in a way it wasn't a problem. But I caught a window where it was all like contingency response. There wasn't actually active conflict. So like you would deploy. We have like a 2-year rotation, and then the last 6 months of that rotation you would deploy. And it was basically just sit around and wait. You know what I mean? And there was always something. Oh, this might go down, or this. You know what I mean?
Sure.
But it wasn't like, oh, we're going to Iraq or we're going to Afghanistan. We're gonna get it on.
Yeah.
Which was really frustrating, and I say that with a little bit of hesitancy because like obviously there's a bad side of that too. If you end up getting into a really bad situation and kind of like you can lose friends and limbs and all the things and that could change your life forever. So I don't want to we just wanted it. But as you probably can relate, like you do want to get it on. That's why you're there.
Yeah.
So
I can relate to that very personally actually because most of my peer group when we joined in 2014, like I enlisted in 2014, and when we went to the infantry, me and a lot of the guys from the School of Infantry, we went to 2nd Battalion, 3rd Marines, and we were all in the weapons company. Most of us together. Some of us were in Golf and Fox, but we got to 2-3. The last time they deployed to combat was 2010 for the Battle of Marja in southern Afghanistan, and after that they stopped deploying to combat. They only went to They did like the unit deployment program to Okinawa, Korea, the Philippines, Malaysia, Thailand, Australia, things like that. And so like a lot of us felt the same exact way you're describing. It's like you joined the infantry or you joined combat arms because you wanted to have that experience, because you felt like that was something that would be beneficial for you as a man or whoever, just in your like develop your life development. And that's why we joined the infantry, was to experience that, you know, to get it on, like you're saying. And then when it doesn't happen, a lot of guys got out feeling like their career was pointless, or they never got to do their actual job, or, you know, a lot of guys felt like I didn't do anything because I never went to combat and never experienced combat. But that happens because sometimes, like you experience, you don't get to choose where you go. You go where they tell you. Yeah. And it can be frustrating, especially when you're working your ass off for 2 years or a year workup, because our workups were a year long. We'd work our asses off and destroy our bodies for a year to go sit in Japan. Like, that was a very frustrating thing that a lot of Marines felt. And I'm sure that SEALs and every other branch have like experienced similar things, depending on like where you ended up deploying, or what deployments your unit was slated for that you did not get to have any input on at all, because that's just where they're being told to go. And that's why I can personally relate to what you're saying. Like, you don't want it. It's like, okay, there's a lot of bad stuff that comes, like, okay, none of my friends died. I didn't get shot. Nobody got hurt, other than like minor mishaps and stuff like that. Like, a buddy of mine was in an AAV that landed in the water, and the AAV caught on fire when they were doing a landing in I think Malaysia, which was insane. Like, a bunch of guys inside, could have been super bad. But that's like not, it's different than like you're in combat and like you saw your friends blow up or something. Like, that's totally different. And like, I'm grateful that I've never had all like some of these horrible, horrific experiences, because I know a lot of folks that have, and I'm sure you do too. And that lives with you for the rest of your life, but at the same time, you do, like, you join the infantry for a reason. You join combat arms for a reason, and not getting to experience it is a hard thing to kind of like come to terms with, I guess, after it's all said and done, so.
Yeah. And I think part of it for me, if I'm just being like a little vulnerable here, is like, I feel like I feel like, and I still feel this to some extent, is you don't actually earn your title until you've been validated in an environment like that. Yeah. It's like we do all this training, and they slim you down for, a couple hundred dudes down to like freaking 20 guys and this and that. And then you go into a platoon, you got to go through it all over again and re-earn your trident and all these things. But it's like, okay, there's still one more rung on the ladder. Yeah. Because this is, you have to validate that you're not going to be a coward. Right. Yeah. And again, I don't think I would have been, but like you can't go out there and be like, oh, I would have crushed it in combat. Like that's a reckless thing to say because you have no idea how you'd respond.
Yeah.
And it kind of equated to like, like if we use like the NFL as an analogy, like let's say Roger Goodell, the commissioner of the NFL, like gets to determine when NFL seasons are played.
Yeah.
Right. But all the teams, 32 teams have to field a team, and you guys have to practice because like you don't know when Roger's gonna be like, all right, week 1 is next week.
Yeah.
Right? So all you're doing is just practicing. You know what I mean? And you made the team, you made the 50 whatever 3-man roster, and you got drafted out of college, and like you're this, like. Okay, so you think you're legit, but until you actually play on Sundays, like you're just playing on the practice squad right now.
Yeah.
But you're on the team.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you're one of, and I feel like that's kind of how I felt a little bit. Of like, all right, until we actually play a game. But it's like, unfortunately, in this case, it's not the commissioner, it's the commander in chief of saying when we can actually go play the game.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I feel like to be like it's
a good analogy.
Yeah, and that's because that's in a way how it is. Because you train so much, and that's where I think guys have a little bit of trouble. Is because you almost feel like it's kind of a waste. You don't really feel like you're doing your job.
Yeah.
And then so many guys, like you're away from your family so much that eventually you're like, all right, like we just did like a 18-month workup. We train in all these environments. You know what I mean? And we train our butts off. Our bodies are beat up. And then, you go and sit in Europe for 6 months. You know what I mean? And you're like, this is not, particularly at a time, when, there's other units that we're actually still, getting in, ticks and stuff. And we're like, all right, why is that not us? Like, why are they wasting us to go to a J set to train the Serbian special forces?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like when we're, you know what I mean? And then we're just drinking beers in Germany.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Like, like it was fun, but it wasn't
yeah.
what you signed up for. Like, hey, I can do my European vacation. Like when I'm
My European vacation.
Yeah. Well, we called it Operation Enduring Per Diem. Like, you know what I mean? Because it was, man.
Per diem.
I mean, but again, but then to your point, like, it's not your, like you're doing what you're told. So in a way you are doing your job, and so they would, and this is with the SF guys too. They use this a lot just for the J sets. I think that stands for Joint Combined Exercise Training, where you just integrate with another country's SOF unit.
Yeah.
And it's technically like we're training together, but it's really like we're training them.
Yeah.
So that would be most of the deployment. You're just popping all over Europe doing J sets, which again was cool. You got to live in a new city, and like, you know what I mean? You're getting per diem, and like you're meeting some cool guys from other countries, and
good experiences, probably.
It was, and interesting to see like how their tactics were different, which sometimes like, oh my God, it'd blow you away. Some of the, like,
Oh, I'm sure.
Oh my God,
I'm sure.
You're just like,
like
oh,
why
man.
is everyone flagging everybody? What's going on? Yeah.
I remember. I'm not going to name the countries.
Yeah, let's not doubt.
But there was a country that had just recently become like NATO certified, which I didn't even know was like a thing. But like their SOF unit had been like certified by NATO as like a recognized SOF force.
Oh wow!
So we went down there and we were going to train with them for a month, and so it was mainly going to be CQC, close quarter combat, so room entries and in clearance and things like that. And it was like the first couple days. And so we were showing them how we would take down like a room with like a 4-man entry, right? Okay. Real basic. We had set up a couple of barriers on the inside, but it was like, all right, day one shit, right?
Yeah.
So they were like, all right, I think it was my platoon chief or our LPO was like, all right, let's see how you guys would do it. And right. So they like stack up on the door. One, they're just an absolute ball of shit on the doorway, but they make entry, and the first guy walks in and he's facing one way, and the second guy walks in facing the other way, and they like centipede into the center of the room, and then the 3 and 4 man just join this like little centipede, and they're all just pointing in different directions, but they like didn't take a corner or anything, and we're all looking at each other like, this has to be a joke, like they're pranking us, like there's no fucking
they gotta be messing with us,
yeah. And then like their senior guy, so like I think it was my LPO, was just like, hey, explain that to me tactically, like how make it make sense. Maybe I'm missing something. And then they were arguing that their way was better. So we're like, all right. So we put a guy with a paint gun like in the corner, and we're like, all right, rerun it. You know what I mean? Like one guy is gonna, you know what I mean? And it was just interesting to see like, oh wow, like we are way ahead. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We are way ahead. So then we had, try to explain to them, hey, here's, take a wall and do this, do that.
Yeah.
Like you're coming right into the, the fatal funnel, and you're standing there. Like you're, so anyway, it was an interesting, experience, and we got to train a lot with the Israelis, which was cool.
Okay.
They have like basically a mock Gaza town that they train in, which
No
is really
kidding.
neat. So we did some exercises there.
Wow.
And it's like all the alleyways are real tight and like, so
Super
again,
sketchy looking,
you
probably.
get to do cool stuff like that.
Yeah.
And those are, good guys, super young. Those like their version of their SEALs, they're all like in their like, like early 20s.
Oh, wow.
And very few of them have a career beyond 5 years. Like they just do their service and they bounce.
Yeah.
So their senior man was like 23. And then like our platoon chief's like 40 with 6'7" with sleeve tats and has like 15 years in the Navy. You know what I mean?
It's kind of like the Roman Legion compared to everybody else almost. You know what I mean? Because like the Romans were like a war fighting society for a long time before they started to crumble and stuff. But like you'd have guys that served for 20, 30 years. They fought in tons of wars, or maybe one war that lasted 20 years. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's interesting to see that the age difference thing. I've never heard that before.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think that service in Israel is like 2 years mandatory service, and I think 18 months for women. But if you want to be like a special operations MOS, like it's like a 5-year contract, I think. So those guys they'd come in at 18, and by 23, then they go to college. I think a lot of them do.
So they're like they're special forces dudes that are serving for 5 years, serve for like 4 to 5 years or whatever, is like about the same time that your average like Marine would serve.
Yeah.
Like 4 or 5 years.
Yeah. But like that 23-year-old is like in a way their senior man of like a platoon. Like imagine that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's kind of wild. I mean, we had some pretty senior guys that were pretty younger, but I mean, even for us, like my platoon sergeant at the time when I first joined in 2014, like he was a sergeant in the Second Battle of Fallujah.
Okay.
So he was like definitely in his late 30s, approaching 40 probably whenever I first got, and as a private, so that's like a significant difference. Although my like section leaders were sergeants and they were like probably close to my age, but I also enlisted like at the max age you could be. They were like 27, 28. But that's definitely still a lot different than like having a 23-year-old dude as your like the senior man in the platoon or whatever. That's very different. Yeah.
You know what's the other weird thing about that is hard for us to comprehend as Americans, because obviously we go on a deployment and it's like you're there 6-9 months or whatever, a year, and you come back.
Yeah.
Well, they're operating out of where they live. So like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's
so imagine
weird.
like going on an op and coming back and like, like going home to your house that night and like sleeping in your own bed.
Yeah.
Because, like it's the areas they operate aren't that far away.
Yeah.
So
that's gotta be weird.
So you show up to base potentially and like load up, and then you'd roll and then go do the thing and come back to base, put away weps and comms and all right, debrief, and then you roll out and you're, and maybe you're in bed by 4 a.m. or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it was just like a normal work day.
I've heard that some of them bring their weapons home with them.
Well, in Israel, a lot of people are walking around with M4s.
No kidding.
Like if you're going through the market, all the military people are in uniform, and a lot of them have their issued weapon, which I thought was sick. I was like, that's actually kind of sick.
That's actually kind of sick.
Because you're in this like market and people are buying fruit or whatever and fish, and like you're like, okay, if someone were to get squirrely here, like I can look around and see 5 people within 100 yards that have their issued weapon.
Yeah.
Which I think obviously is a bit of a deterrent. So that
it is a
or
deterrent.
they're all waiting at the bus stop to go to base.
Yeah.
And there's 10 people there in garrison camis with M4s just standing at the bus stop on the side of the road.
Yeah.
I was like, that's kind of badass.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I've seen some pictures of like women Israelis like in the mall with their like in civilian attire with their their issued rifle slung behind their back.
It was a little weird at first. Yeah,
You're
for the ones that aren't in uniform, I'm like, do I need to like worry about this guy? But then you're just like,
you supposed to have that on
he's
you?
buying like a mango. You know what I mean? Like, all right, I think he's good.
Okay, I guess this is normal.
He's buying fresh mangoes. I think we're safe.
It's a very different culture for sure, but they also have a lot of different like like you said, like they've got a lot of things right on their doorstep. Rather than. It'd be like if we were doing ops if you were living in like El Paso, Texas, and you were doing ops in Mexico, and then just coming right back to El Paso,
going to bed that night,
going to bed.
Yeah,
that'd be weird. It'd be kind of weird.
But it's interesting. You talk to other units. They think it's wild that we have this, like the fact that we deploy and we're away from our family for 6 to 12 months.
Yeah.
From their perspective is wild. They're like, wait, when's the last time you've been home? And we'd be like, oh, this is like month 5 of a 6-month deployment. And they're like, wait, what? Like you haven't been home?
Wow.
So it's interesting to see how their perspective is so different.
Yeah.
And that's true with a lot of, I think, European units. Like they don't have like, oh, we're going to go out to the Mediterranean and just like sit on a ship for 9 months.
For 9 months,
That's not a thing. You know what I mean? Or, go to Japan, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Like that, the whole deploy, that readiness and that, postured, strategy that we have like is not like in the norm in other countries. So it's interesting just to see a different perspective on it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I know that one of the things I think about sometimes is like when you talk about deployments and deployment times, like I like just another, again, going back to the Roman Legion, like sometimes those guys would go off for like 5 years.
It's crazy.
5, 10 years. I don't even know how long, like years and years that they're just gone from their families. And there's no, I don't know if they were able to send letters back then. I think they were just like, I'll wait and hopefully that he comes back. He's off fighting whatever war, and like they would just be gone for years at a time and then come back and like either their wife or their spouse is still there or they've moved on and their house has been sold or their house is gone. Like you never know what you're coming back to. I can't imagine like going to fight a war and not having talked to anybody back home for 5 years.
Yeah.
Like that'd
Crazy,
be a really weird, like a weird thing to wrap my head around anyway. Like just kind of crazy.
Well, I think the closest thing we have is World War II. You
Yeah,
know what
probably,
I mean?
yeah.
Like that was okay. Like this is not a deployment cycle. Like it ends when it ends. And
Yeah, you're over there
and
till
no
it's
one
over.
knew when it. You know what I mean? How wild is that? And then a lot of times
Yeah.
they had to lock down comms just because, like for OPSEC. You know what I mean? So like those
Yeah.
letters you're writing are getting held up for months. You know what I mean? So that it wasn't crazy because that wasn't that long ago. You know what I mean?
About 70, 80 years ago. So it's weird to think it wasn't really in the grand scheme of like time and
Yes.
like the timeline. It's not that long ago, but for folks like or folks like me anyway, like you look back and like all those guys, anybody that fought in World War II at this point, if they're still alive, they're probably over 100 years old, which is just insane. And I wish that we had podcasts and like interview stuff like this set up back in the early 90s or something, man. I wish there's so many World War II vets that I talked to throughout my like youth that I wish I could interview now, but they're just not around anymore.
Yeah, I got to go to the 80th D-Day.
Oh, you were there?
Normandy last June.
Okay.
And man, that was incredible.
I bet.
I was there with a charity that we've supported called the Best Defense Foundation, and they basically, Donnie Edwards, he's a former NFL guy and an absolute patriot. He started a charity where they take World War II vets back to like their battlefields, and they pay for everything. And this started as Donnie just doing it out of pocket. He was an NFL guy, and he was like, "Hey, you want to go to Normandy?" Like he ran into some like old wet, and it's like, "I'll take you to Normandy. Like, come, I'll pay for everything. Just come with me, and we'll go together."
That's cool.
And it turned into this machine where, like, I think in D-Day they brought like 60 guys.
Wow.
But what's cool is like they partnered up with like Delta Airlines, and like so they gave them a big hero's welcome like at the airport, and they had the water cannon, and like they had
cool.
I think on one of the trips they had like the flight attendants were like, dressed in like the era of like and they did like mail call, and there was a bunch of like elementary school kids that had written letters, but they made it like, military mail call. But then, they're there for 5-6 days and they tour all the sites and everything. So I was there with them. And it was just so, I got to be around these guys. And it was just so cool to be a part of it. But also one thing that was really neat that stuck with me was like the people of France are still so appreciative of what happened.
Really?
It's insane. We'd be driving, because we had like 3 chartered buses, and kids would be running out to the end of the driveway with American flags because they knew it was like the veterans returning. And when we would get out of the bus, it was like they were rock stars. People, they were literally signing autographs, and these little French kids waving American flag. And I was like, man, that's very humbling, but also like maybe a lesson for us. You know what I mean? Because I was surprised. I thought maybe France would have like, hey, let's kind of maybe forget about that, moment of history when we all dropped our weapons and let another country come, die on our soil to get our country back.
Yeah.
But no, they embrace it, and it's really cool. But to be around those guys, man, you hear some of those stories and you realize like, we're standing on the shoulders of giants, man. You know what I mean?
That's for sure. I can't it's hard to wrap my head around and part of it's just maybe social media and like the polarization of American society or maybe world, like human society in general. But there's so few people that have that level of dedication where they're like, there is this one evil entity out there and I will, I'll leave America and go over there until this is over and fight for these people to have their freedom back, And plus, that generation of people they grew up in the Great Depression. So, growing up in the Great Depression, like they probably became I would imagine pretty hardened folk, because like the bread lines and nobody had really that much food. There wasn't the grocery stores weren't stocked like they are now. People were hard up. They were hard up, especially after like Herbert Hoover and everything that was going on with that. And, when the stock market crashed, a lot of people lost their entire like family fortunes. And like they came up from humble beginnings, and we needed those types of people that were that like resilient and tenacious to go win a war with like that type of menace, because you had like the Nazis running around over there like on meth that were just like bulldozing through towns, like crazy stuff. Like it almost seems like a Marvel movie, you know what I mean? Like that Captain America movie, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and they were out there just fighting like this regime that was like genuinely intent on reshaping the world, and a level of like real actual fascism, not like the fake fascism people throw the word around now that doesn't actually mean anything.
It's the modern
but like
buzzword.
real actual fascism where you were being persecuted and murdered for your political beliefs, your religious beliefs, the way that you looked, like your demographics. And like once we got pulled into it after the bombing of Pearl Harbor, like I think everybody was pretty much on board. Like we have to do something. Because if we don't, like, if not me, then who? You know what I mean? And it definitely is like one of those things. I look up to a lot of these World War II vets a lot, because like that whole generation of people, just a different caliber of human being, And I always compare myself to them, because I'm like, am I the kind of person today that they would feel proud of? Because I almost like think, man, I want to make those people proud. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, because like people like my grandfather, for example, because he fought World War II. He didn't fight. He was an ensign in the Navy. He was on the USS Mobile out in the Pacific. He was on a merchant trade vessel that went back and forth in the Atlantic. He actually went to Hiroshima after we dropped the bomb.
Yeah.
Surprisingly, there were some pictures of him in Hiroshima with like the destruction in the background. And from stories he told my father, he said that everybody was very friendly. Strangely enough, which is very interesting to think about. Like, man, I wonder how that dynamic, were they being friendly because they were afraid, or were they being friendly because they were like just happy that the war was over? Like, I don't know, but definitely an interesting time for sure.
If you think about it, I think the stats on this, I could be off, but I think that when I checked it, 16 million men were, involved, Americans in World War II. Over half of them signed up. I think it was like 60 to 65% signed up before they were even drafted. So let's call it 8 million. And I wonder, okay, today, if something were to happen, and someone was trying to take over the world and was, committing genocide on millions of people because of their religious beliefs or whatever it is, would 8 million men sign up, and sign on the dotted line when it's game on? Because I remember one of the vets I was talking to, he enlisted, and he had joked that his mother said if you don't, then don't bother coming home. Yeah. Can you imagine a mother saying that? Like, can you imagine? Because you'd think it'd be the opposite. Like, you can work at the grocery store. Don't sign up. But his own mother was telling him, you better go down the street and sign up with all the other neighborhood kids, because that's just what was expected at the time. Yeah. And
this was back in the 1940s.
Yeah, this was World War II.
Okay.
Yeah, he was telling me this, and I'm blown away. I'm like, because I remember how protective my mom was when I tried to tell her I wanted to be a SEAL, and she was super upset. And like, that was ultimately one of the reasons why I shelved it for a couple years. Yeah. Because it just was, man, she was just so worried. You know what I mean?
My mom was worried too, and I was like, I'm joining the Marine Corps.
And I think it's normal. And I eventually would tell her on Mother's Day that I had a SEAL contract and it was going. She did not know.
That's hilarious.
And I was shipping in like 2 weeks. So
that's funny. She's probably super happy.
I kind of 180'd on that one a little bit, but to put it in historical context of what the dynamic was at the time. But how awesome is that like 9 million men signed up to say, hey, we're going to fight. It was almost as like if you were a kid in the neighborhood, or obviously not a kid, but like if you weren't, people would be like, what's he still doing here?
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
What's he still doing here?
Like,
not over there.
Crazy.
Yeah.
And just like I went out to Okinawa. There's a charity that I work with, volunteer with, called Force Blue. It's actually really cool. So they take former like special operators that have the dive qual, and they team up with like marine biologists and conservation efforts, and we go dive with these people and help them with underwater conservation. So a lot of it's like rebuilding coral reefs and stuff. So it's fun because it's like, we want to have purpose, and we're comfortable underwater. We got trained in the military, so they try to use those skills to. So we went out to Okinawa, and part of the project was the lanes that the UDTs, the underwater demolition teams, had blown up to prep for the main, the Marines and the Army to land.
Oh, yeah.
They had to blow up a bunch of coral heads because obviously places like Tarawa and stuff, they had to learn, they learned the hard way.
Tarawa's, that's
right.
brutal.
So we went out and it was 80 years later, and we replanted some coral heads at the same lanes. We had it historically accurate of where the UDTs originally had blown up, the coral, which was kind of a full circle moment. But while we were there, we also got to tour a lot of the battlefields, man.
Yeah.
And, so it was like, Hacksaw Ridge and like places like that, which, by the way, it shows you how different it was. Like, if you were standing on Hacksaw Ridge looking down, no one in their right mind would have ever said to assault up that, like a frontal assault. Like it literally, it's like almost straight down, and there's, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like you'd been like, all right, let's hold what we got. Let's like maybe send a couple guys to the flanks and see if like there's another way up. And if they eventually would find a saddle up the side, and that's what they eventually, but like it was after like 2 or 3 waves of like 90% casualties. Right.
Yeah.
So just to get a tactical perspective, that was very interesting because I'm up there because we had a historian with us, and I'm like, wait, so because it was, I believe, the Army that did the Hacksaw Ridge, right? Because Marines went north, Army went south, I think. Or maybe I believe it was. Yeah. But this historian saying, like they did 2 or 3, like the Allies were down there and the Japanese were up here, and I'm like, and they had machine gun nests and like it was a fortified position. And I'm like, I was like, so how did they assault it? And he was like, they try to go straight up. And I'm like,
insane.
There's no way.
Yeah,
like
dude.
They're like, platoon commander, whoever it was, didn't see like this giant high ground and be like, okay, that's a no-go.
That's a no-go. Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? Like the accepted casualties were so high that like we're just like, okay, forward, forward assault. Like what?
I can't imagine. And the guys that were actually doing the scaling of that cliff were like, all right, cool. Yeah. This is what you want me to do. Yeah. This is what I'm willing to do this. Yeah. Like the willingness.
And then I think even when they found the saddle, off to the left, that would have been to the east.
Yeah,
it still took 7 or 8 waves to get up the saddle and like take the high ground.
God almighty. Dude.
So it was really interesting. There was 260,000 people died on that island, man.
260,000. Yeah. Okinawa was the bloodiest battle of the Pacific Theater. Yeah. A lot of people don't realize that. They always think Iwo Jima or something like that.
It's the last island, right?
Yeah.
And so the Japanese knew, and this was interesting. The historian that was with us, the dude was brilliant. They intercepted comms. It was after the first island we took. The Japanese brass knew they couldn't win the war. Like after that first, so they've intercepted comms. So basically, now it's okay. We need to delay it as long as They say tactically we cannot defeat the Americans. They will win. Yeah. The only way we can quote win is basically by making them lose. The spirit, because like they're incurring so many casualties. Yeah. So we just need to make it as bloody as humanly possible in hopes that they're going to run out of gas. But just thinking in early 1942, they're already knowing they can't win.
Yeah.
But so that Okinawa was the last, the last island where they're like, okay, the mainland is basically next.
Yeah.
And just create, what was another really sad thing that we learned about is the people. Because the Okinawans weren't Japanese. Like they were like, different. And they were told that if the Americans, capture you, they're gonna, rape your kids, and they're gonna, do all these horrible things.
They're monsters.
And then there was also the cultural part about, not surrendering and doing the honorable thing. So there's like a suicide. I don't remember what it's called, like Suicide Cliff, but the women were literally throwing their babies off the cliff because the Americans were approaching, because propaganda had said like, hey, like, I mean, so you talk about, again, it wasn't that long ago, you know what I mean? Yeah. It was just really sad to hear like the real truth of, man, have they only known, like we weren't, of course we were fighting war, and I'm sure it was brutal, and I'm sure bad things happened, but like if guys rolled up on on a village and there was a mother with an infant, like they weren't going to get massacred. Like, you know what I mean?
No, they weren't going to massacre them,
that was really sad because they showed us the cliff and they're like, that was kind of the last, like the southernmost area. And that's where everyone would jump off. And like literally mothers were throwing their infant babies off the cliff.
Out of fear.
And then jumping after them and committing the suicide as well. So just the dark underbelly of war, man, was able to be seen when we made that trip.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of history in that island. Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of things that, I don't know if you've ever read the book Of the Old Breed by Eugene Sledge. If you haven't, if you have time, or audiobook, I'm sure there's an audiobook of it, but it's called Of the Old Breed by Eugene Sledge, who was, I believe he was a mortarman, and he fought on Peleliu and also on the Battle of Okinawa.
Okay.
And a lot of the tactics they were using on Peleliu were very similar to the Battle of Okinawa in the sense that like they did a lot of these bonsai charges, like in the middle of the night when everybody's bedded down, sleeping in their foxhole or whatever. And they basically would just try to keep the Americans awake all the time, like 24 hours a day. And like they might give an hour, they do another bonsai charge. And so you never know. Or they just come in and try to silently bayonet people while they're sitting there in their trench, like passed out, or their foxhole passed out, just to keep people awake all the time and constantly stressed and constantly afraid that you're going to get attacked throughout the whole night. And then the whole day is obviously a lot of carnage going on. There was just a lot of, that was a very violent offensive. And like you said, Okinawa was that last island in the chain that before the mainland. And so they were like, we're going to try to make this as demoralizing for them as possible and hope that they run out of, steam before they get here. And then ultimately what would end up happening is there were some very high level meetings at the Department of War at the time where they were like, we need to figure out if we're going to invade this island or if we're going to drop a bomb on it. Because if we invade that island, we're estimating that we're going to receive like over 1 million casualties. Like they were estimates were exceeding 1 million deaths.
Oh yeah, 100%.
And that's probably would have been true because think about like fighting on the mainland island of Japan and they're defending their homeland. They are going, every single man, woman, and child would have been fighting to the death. So they were like, we got to figure out another way. And so they basically just justified the bombings by saying, look, if we do it this other way, we're going to lose 1 million people, and it's also probably going to cause a lot more devastation for the country. And so to prevent that, they dropped a bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and they're like, okay, we're good. We're good.
And one thing people need to realize is, had we not dropped those bombs and we did invade, the aerial assault that would have come with it would have been way worse than a Hiroshima or not. Because I got to see it. So in Okinawa, we were shelling that island for like 4 months.
Oh yeah, and shelling the crap out of it.
And I asked the historian, I was like, and this is a little, I think we also have to acknowledge, like, and this is part of war, man. But it was not like, there was not much CivCast concerns like when we were doing that, because I asked them, I was like, how were they targeting like the military positions? And they're like, he was like, they really weren't. Yeah. And I said, and he's like, it's not really talked about, but he said, you got to understand historical context. He's like, at that point in the war, like CivCast was not like really a thing, because the Germans were doing it like in over England, and like it had almost become like, all right, that's not a thing anymore because it's just all out war. Yeah. So, for what people need to realize is we would have taken that same approach. And we even did it with the over Tokyo and stuff, you know what I mean? And he said it got a little tricky because a lot of people, they were using their civilians to assemble some stuff for like military items, but they were doing it in their houses because they were like basically delegating it out. So like, technically those were military targets. Yeah. So like when we firebombed Tokyo, a lot of that was people's homes, but the justification was like, well, hey, they're making weapons of war. Yeah. You know what I mean? So like, again, it's important obviously to understand the context of the time. Like because if you don't apply context, then like there's obviously horrific things in history and it's not justifying, but it was interesting to hear that of like, wait, all right, so we had like battleships just strafing up and down the coast for 4 months, just literally shelling it all day long with whatever those guns are. They're bigger. They're obviously bigger than
massive
105s.
Battleship guns.
Yeah. Like what are those? Like 12-inch guns, 10-inch guns. Huge. And then obviously sending the bombers overhead and dropping the payload and going back, rejocking and do it. So people need to realize that, hey, obviously it was horrible what had to be done, but the aerial assault that would have happened if we were sending the Marines and the Army, and and it would have been. I mean, imagine how much we would have shelled it before we would even try to establish a beachhead. So
it would have been exponentially worse. There would have been an exponential higher level of destruction on everything, on all the historical architecture, on all the, because we're not going to just send people in without softening the target first. Like that's just bad military doctrine. Then they would not have done that. So they're like, in even doing that, they still estimated that they would have had like 1 million casualties, just because they saw how many people died in Okinawa taking that small little dinky island out there, and they shelled the crap out of Okinawa before they came in, like you said, for like weeks and weeks. And the same thing with Iwo Jima and all these other places. They would shell the hell out of them for a long time and drop bombs everywhere. And even after that, they would still land, and all these guys would come out of these cave systems and tunnels and bunkers, and they would still be just as heavily fortified. And you'd still have just as many casualties. But yeah, either way, that was an interesting time for sure. But it's funny. You reminded me of a story when you're talking about that one guy, that one World War II vet said that his mom was basically going to disown him if he didn't join. I saw a video recently, and this is a little bit different because we're living in current day and current era. Stories are a little bit different, especially the current wars that are happening. So Ukraine, Russia, obviously been going on since 2022, but I saw a video of a Russian mother that was basically excoriating her son for choosing not to go to war in Ukraine. And her son left Russia and is just traveling around the world instead. And basically saying, "You're no son of mine. You're a coward for not going to die. It would have been better for you to go off there and die in Ukraine than for you to be a coward and not fight in the war." It's like, there are some people who've been propagandized so much over there that they genuinely believe. And she's like, "You're just going to leave me here alone." It's like, what if your son was dead? You'd be alone too. So it's just like, it was very strange. It was a very strange, and there's a recording. You can look it up online of that, like the woman that basically calling her son a coward for not going to fight in Ukraine. He's like, "I'm not doing that. I want to go live my life outside of Russia and go do something else." Obviously the Ukrainians don't really have the same choice because they're defending their home. But it's the Russians have obviously been propagandized a lot by their administration, and they also feel like the NATO encroaching on their territory is an existential threat. It'd be like if Russia was in Cuba, kind of same idea. So I mean, I get seeing it from both sides, but I've got a lot of friends that have been over to Ukraine that are still there now. Some people that are going back and forth. I'm sure you probably know somebody here and there. I got buddies that I served with that got out of the Marine Corps, but they never experienced combat. And they're like, "I'm going to Ukraine." And they went over and fought in Ukraine.
Jeez.
Some of them got shot, came back, medevaced and stuff like that, but some of them didn't. But a lot of Americans have gone over there to experience that, or guys that had fought in Iraq or Afghanistan, and they're like, I want to go back, to do this and fight for something they believed in. Which is a very complicated thing. Obviously, the whole thing's very complicated. Me personally, I feel my own certain way about fighting inside of another nation's war. If you're not fighting with the American military, I don't necessarily think I would be interested in doing something like that. But no knock on anybody else who feels called to do something. You only got one life to live, and you got to live it to the way that you feel gives it the most purpose, right? Yeah. But interesting seeing that. Either way, like I said, interesting seeing a Russian mother calling her son a coward for not going and fighting there. And the Russians have been doing this thing where they're kind of just throwing bodies at the problem, which is what they typically tend to do. They've got that history of doing that. I mean, they did that in World War II and up, ongoing forward, just because they've got so many people. They just keep throwing meat at it in the grinder in hopes that it kind of pushes them back.
Well, what was interesting, this might have actually been a video I saw on your page. This was years ago, but it was towards the beginning of the conflict, and it was a warning sign to me of not really a warning sign, but of oh, they're not as good as they're pretending to be. And I think there was a tank column. I don't know if you remember this.
Yeah.
That got ambushed. Right. And obviously I'm not a tank guy, but I'm assuming the tactics are similar. set a base of fire, set a maneuvering element, and like, you know what I mean, work the problem.
Yeah.
Right. And you're in tanks, and they got ambushed by like, I think from like the ditches on the side of the road or whatever.
Yeah.
And they all started dismounting and getting it and running to the ditch, and they're in a tank. And I'm like, can you imagine that? Like you're leaving and not having like an IAD, immediate action drill where you're like, okay, contact left, we're going to, return fire, we're going to whatever it is, whatever in tank school you learn. I'm sure it's not rocket science as land warfare is not. Yeah. But when I saw that, I'm like, these guys aren't even trained. They're in a tank column and they don't even know how to take like basic contact. And obviously that's one anecdotal example. Like that could have just been like, maybe it was their reserve unit or whatever, and it was the Keystone Cops, whatever.
The Keystone Cops,
but you know what I mean? That to me, that was like, man, they have this giant military, but maybe it's just a paper tiger. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I mean, we'll see. It's obviously crazy to, and you've obviously done a really good job covering a lot of the drone stuff now. Yeah. And that just sounds terrifying. You know what I mean?
It sounds
like,
horrible.
oh my God.
I don't have any interest in I would not want to be out there on the front lines out there, dude. That'd be terrifying. There's drones waiting. There's drones that they'll have sitting out there just waiting, turned on, and then like they're just kind of monitoring the area, and then they'll take off after somebody passes by. Yeah. Dude, I've seen too many. Like honestly, it's desensitized me so badly from seeing just so much horrific violence like that from that stuff. It's just not good. I have to like take a step back sometimes from it.
Yeah.
This is too much. It's not pretty. It's not glamorous. Like, I mean, this is like, you look at like for example, the stuff that happened, the murder of Charlie Kirk that happened recently, that like seeing that, I saw that video, like the up close of that.
Oof, yeah.
Horrific.
Yeah.
Like, what a horrific thing. Would ever wish that on anybody if they're like, no matter who they are, don't care. Like you should never be persecuted for your beliefs or speaking. You should be allowed to do that in this country. That's part of what makes America so great. It's part of the reason why America is the greatest country in the history of the universe. But seeing that, like being how graphic that was, and I'm like, oh Jesus, man. There's like, I knew inside, I was like, I've seen neck wounds like in certain videos. I'm like, there's no way that he's going to survive that. Yep. But I thought to myself afterwards, I was like, okay, like I know I can look at this from an objective standpoint. Like I'm trying to like analyze this in my own way, just based on like my own interpretation and experiences that I've seen through my phone, not in person. Different, obviously, in person than in your phone. But your average person doesn't see the type of graphic content that I'm seeing on a daily basis, because I'm like trying to cover a lot of global conflicts, geopolitics, current affairs, all that kind of stuff, military technology. You see a lot of graphic stuff, even if it's unintentional. And I've tried to get better about sharing less and less of it, because people shouldn't be seeing that. It's not like, I don't want to glorify like that horrific violent acts and stuff like that. It's more just to like analyze it and like try to like see like from a tactics perspective, like how this is happening, or telling the story about it, because it is interesting, like for historical purposes, because we're learning a lot of lessons from the intel we're gaining from this conflict. But the fact that I've seen all this stuff and been desensitized, and so this situation happens, and I'm kind of desensitized to it, and then I see it getting shared everywhere, and I'm like, oh no, there's a lot of people out there in America that don't see this type of graphic violence on a day-to-day basis. That's going to be very shocking for them to see that.
Big time.
And like all the college kids that were out there right nearby, and like kids that were as young as 12 years old that were nearby that saw that right up close and personal. I guarantee some of them are going to like have like post-traumatic stress from that.
Absolutely.
Like, I can't imagine a 12-year-old kid seeing that after not being exposed to any type of violence really. And then like all of a sudden seeing somebody's like, neck basically explode in front of them. Like I can't imagine the impact that's going to have on a young mind. And especially the guy that was like asking him the question that happened, like the last dude to ask him a question who's standing that far away from him. Yeah. Like that dude's going to need therapy, like, or need to talk to somebody. I've seen he did an interview recently with, I think 60 Minutes or something, but it's not good for the human brain, even if you're not actively in a combat environment. Like it's not good for a human mind to just be constantly absorbing this horrific graphic violence all the time, because you get so desensitized to it. And if that's what you're aiming for, okay, cool. But like, there's not really a reason to be desensitized to that for your average everyday person, because like it reduces your ability to have empathy for people. It reduces your ability to be able to relate to folks, I feel like. And it also, it kind of dehumanizes people to a certain degree. And I don't want to ever lose that ability to kind of like relate to people and to like look at people as like, hey, that's a person, and like be able to respect people for who they are and be able to talk to people civilly and be able to like have, peaceful conversations and dialogue and debate on ideas and stuff like that. Cause that's one of the problems that we have in this country is like being able to communicate with people that may not necessarily agree with how you think or what your belief systems are. We got to be able to do that kind of stuff. I don't know.
Yeah, it's been getting crazy, man. And I've thought about this a little bit. Part of it is like I think there's a couple of things at play here. Like part of it, I was thinking about is actually last night. It kind of hit me a little bit. Is like the way we do primaries, where like obviously the Democrats run against themselves and the Republicans. You know what I mean? And to establish like the candidate, primaries in a way makes it so like moderates don't. Like it's harder for moderates to succeed because if you think about it, like in a primary, only the most like passionate political people vote in a primary. I've never voted in a primary, and I'm like, I'm pretty involved. Like I am passionate like with what's going on in the country and all this, but like I've never been like, oh, I got to go vote in that primary, right? Yeah. Like whoever the Republican's going to be, like I'll learn about him or her, whatever. Yeah. And vice versa on the Democratic side, but. Because like, obviously as we record this, like the shutdown thing's going on and this and that. And
this is day 4.
And there was a guy who came on and he was just a commentator. So like take it with a grain of salt, but he's basically saying, this is literally just meant to like, we need 60 senators and like to push this forward. But a lot of the, this was his hypothesis. There's a lot of people that want to vote yes on this from the Democrats, but they can't do it because they have like in their next primary, like if they're going to have to go against like their like far left base, and they're going to be like, you voted on, you didn't hold your ground, you know what I mean? And and this is both sides are guilty of this. Yeah. So it almost encourages people to, all right, I know, common sense should say we should do this, but I have to, like, I'm trying to do self-preservation so I get elected again. Yeah. And then same thing with the media, right? And it's like, okay, what's going to get the best ratings? Well, people watch the news, when they're fired up and they're engaged with like, oh my God, like, you know what I mean? So of course they're going to report once again on the extremes. And then what ends up happening is that now we are all pulled to either side. And then, obviously you sprinkle in things like, lobbyists and like big pharma and like, all these other giant forces that are like influencing horrible decisions and just the amount of money some of these politicians are making behind the, under the table. It makes you realize like why I think the dynamic is the way it is. You know what I mean? And it sucks because I feel like in a way we're all getting played. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think a lot of people probably feel that way.
And so, but I was just thinking about, I was like, maybe obviously, democracy and what we've created is still, the best way to do it, but can't be perfect. And I would think one little aspect of this that maybe we're not realizing is just like the nature of the primaries. Is that creating, so like a moderate can't declare that they're a moderate because then when they have to get reelected in 4 or 6 years, like that won't win at the primary, and they're going to go, oh, look at that thing you voted on and you did this. Oh, in that one press conference you said this. Yeah. And it's like, because he's a level-headed guy and there's area in the middle we could work together. Yeah. But it's almost, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, dude. Honestly, I think the biggest problem is partisan politics. Like I think that I really genuinely wish that there was no such thing as parties. Like if they could get rid of that, because I'm a registered independent for a reason. I like to think for myself. I don't like to just like be like, oh, everything that everyone says on this side is right, or everything that everyone says on this side is right. No, it's like, no, there may be some things that are like nice from both sides. Like, I mean, it's like kind of like the libertarian to me. It's like, do what you want. Leave me alone. I don't want you to take my money. Yes. I want my guns.
Stay the hell out of my way.
Stay out of my way. Yeah. Stay out of my life. Let me be successful. Let me work hard and build something for myself. I think most Americans are probably somewhere in the center. Of course. It's just that the people that get the most attention are on the far fringes of both sides. And it makes everybody in that entire side look completely psychotic. Yes. And so we are all like, we're like, oh, wow, we're melting down. Like everything's falling apart because the things that you're seeing are the sound bites from the people that are the most controversial because they say things that are going to get clicks and get engagement and get shares and likes and views and all that stuff. And instead of like, hey, why don't we like talk about this civilly and figure out like, hey, what's best for the American people? And then, and part of it is also, it's like it's hard for you to know everything that's going on when like these bills are like 1,000 pages long, bro. I'm like, I don't have time to read that.
It's completely insane.
Yeah, I don't have time to read that.
You know, I think it was Warren Buffett said that the quickest way to fix our budget is to, if basically they don't pass a balanced budget, the congressmen don't get paid. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like imagine, guess what? They're going to fix it.
Exactly.
Guess what?
Right? Because, guess what? That $60 million you needed to renovate the Kennedy Center. Yeah, that's out. And like all this crap that like they all throw in, and both sides do it.
Oh yeah.
Right. And it has nothing to do with the bill. And they attach all these other things. Well, hey, I need, $50 million for this like park we're going to renovate in my district or whatever. So, and they, okay, yeah, even though the bill's not at all related to it. Yeah. And it ends up leading to just, also do the insider trading thing. I think so. I would love to have a conversation on a podcast. And again, both sides are guilty of this.
Yeah.
But there's a few congressmen and senators that are very adamant that like we should still have the ability to trade stocks. And it's like, okay, sir, if you can put your money in an index fund, you're going to get 10%, 8 to 10% on an annual return on average. Most 95% of the people can't beat that, the S&P 500 anyway.
Yeah.
So you're not like conceding this right that like, like if I become a senator, I now can't do this one thing that all the other Americans do. It's not that big of a deal. Just put your money in a mutual fund and let it rip.
Yeah.
But let
it rip. Yeah.
when you see these people, there was, and again, both sides are guilty of this, but I saw I think it was a liberal podcast, and to the host's credit, he was not grilling, but asked, I think it was a governor candidate.
Yeah.
I guess she did like a $7 million trade, and it was like perfectly timed. And and he asked her about it, and she acted like she didn't know what he was talking about. She's like, I don't know. I do a lot of stock trading. I'd have to get back to you. And he was like, no, like it was this. And, and she's like,
I'm sure you would remember this like, $8 million buy.
$7 million transaction. It's like, you just coincidentally sold off, $7 million of stock before this subpoena was issued to the company because of some big crisis, that's about to unfold.
Yeah.
But you realize how easy it would be if you were in that position to inside trade, because like if let's say Apple's about to get subpoenaed because something was discovered that Apple's working with the Russians or the Chinese, and their stock's going to go down 70% overnight, and you're a senator and you dump 2 million of shares because it's about to get issued, like that's insider trading. You know what I mean? Like that is 100% because you were privy to information no one else was, or when they subsidize these industries of like, solar is going to be the new thing, and all of a sudden,
everybody's in
they
solar.
all now have brother-in-laws on the board, and they just dumped $1 million into stock of this one solar company that's just going to get the contract to all the bases. That you know what I mean? And like it's so easy how you could, and that to me, there's just a lot of I think forces that are influencing kind of the insanity that we see. And I just think as Americans, we just got to be the watchdogs, and also I think some of those other forces could be, from outside the country.
For sure.
We have to acknowledge that, because I always like have this exercise is like, okay, if we were to red cell the United States, how would we defeat it? Right? Radicalize their youth, corrupt their education system, so they're only one generation away from losing the American spirit. I mean, I feel like that's in a way, like that'd be one. Okay, we need to corrupt their politicians. We need to honeypot these guys and get dirt on them so we can manipulate them behind the scenes and make them do things. We can, get in their food supply, these companies like Tyson that are like owned by the Chinese and like that are 40% of our chicken supply. Like overnight, crazy. All right, pull a lever. I mean, I look at it in the context if there was ever global conflict, like you could just turn the off switch on that overnight. You know what I mean? So I don't know. That's the stuff now that I'm out, I think about.
It makes me paranoid too. Like having all these like critical vulnerabilities that other countries have the ability to pull the strings on. That definitely makes me very paranoid.
Launch a social media app that is owned by our biggest world rival that has a bunch of high school kids consuming their content on,
doing
and
dances.
Slowly turn that knob on what they're, you know what I mean? Like
what they're getting, what they're being
exactly,
fed.
Right?
Yeah. Not only that, but like the bot farms are a real problem, dude. And I felt it. I've had massive bot attacks on my account, like knowing for a fact they're bots.
Yeah.
And I don't know what country they're coming from or what entity they're coming from, but I know that it was coordinated.
So what are they? Are they commenting negative things?
Commenting things,
gotcha.
usually. Yeah, commenting things to drive. Like, they'll send like a ton of bots, and they'll all be commenting similar things to drive a narrative to make everybody here think that that's the general consensus.
Yes.
That's not the general consensus. They're just like Americans. Like if you're not like, if you don't use social media that often, except for just to scroll and like see some things, you might actually look at the comment section and like see what the general consensus is. And if it's like everything is negative about it because I was talking about something, whatever, like then people might be like, your regular people might be like, wow, is that true? I wonder if that's true. And then they start finding stuff about it, and there may be some like fake articles written about it that are just like saying that that's true, even if it's not. And they try to drive narratives with that. And I've seen it time and time again with all kinds of stuff. You see it with every topic you can imagine. Anything that would be considered even remotely controversial in any way, you can tell. I can tell because you go look at some of these accounts. It's like, that is a bot account. That is not a real person. Like, you don't see any pictures of that one person. It's just like a couple random posts. It's like, they're following 7,000 people, and there's like, they've posted 2 or 3 times, or maybe they don't even have one post. Like a lot of weird stuff like that. I can't remember who said it. It was like there's some research institute that did a scan of the internet. And they're like hypothesizing that like over 60% of the internet's accounts are bots.
Really?
Yeah, like 60%. Yeah. Like, that's crazy. That means the other 40%, which are like real people, are being like impacted and influenced by all of these bots that are just out there from either adversarial entities, adversarial nations, whatever. Because like, I guarantee you that Iran's got them out there. Guarantee that Russia's got them out there. Know for a fact. Guarantee that China's got them out there. Guarantee all these countries, and America's probably got them out
probably
there. Guaranteed. Guarantee. You have to, because otherwise how are you going to compete? So like every country, and then like that's what they do. Every country's compensating. So now every country's trying to put stuff out to influence like policy and influence the direction of narratives and influence politics, influence everything. Whether it be like a type of food item that you should like, or if it's like a certain infrastructure piece that's being built, like that. Say for example, like the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative, right? For example, that like there's a lot of stuff going on with that people see, and they're like kind of getting people like hooked on their, on their teat, right?
Yeah.
Like to get them locked in on basically like, big, like, hey, we'll give you all this money and we'll invest in all this infrastructure in your country, but now you're going to give us unfettered access to all your cobalt or whatever it is in your country.
Yeah.
And we'll even make this dam for you.
Oh, yeah.
And we'll like help make sure that you get electricity for all your rural towns, but you're going to give us all your natural resources, and you're going to give us unfettered access to your government and anything else that we ask you for. And they're like, oh, sure, you're going to give us free electricity and like all this infrastructure? Yeah, they sound the dotted line. And that happens, like, especially Africa. They've been really harping on Africa big time because they see, like, Africa's really not, and there's some countries in Africa that are pretty, they're relatively stable, but a lot of the places out there are still pretty unstable. They've been unstable for hundreds and hundreds of years because you've had warlords and people fighting over power, and like there's a lot of barbarism out there still, a lot of problems. I mean, even in South Africa, which is probably, I would say, arguably like one of the, well, in Egypt too, is arguably like the 2 countries that have their stuff together the most. There's still a lot of division, a lot of polarization, especially in South Africa more than any, just because like, they were colonized at one point, and now a lot of folks that are native to the area are like not cool with it.
Yeah.
But anyway, there's a lot. Bottom line is like the things that we're consuming on a daily basis and seeing on a daily basis, from whether it be like mainstream media, whether it be like C-SPAN, the social media apps, all these different things. A lot of it's like being put out there. There's like purpose for it. There's a reason for that happening. There may be like some brain rot in there, but there's a lot of like hidden messaging.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing is you kind of called it out, is if as a normal person, for people that I think are probably like you and me, like I've always been like, all right, these are my beliefs, and like I'm not going to be like easily influenced
Yeah,
because
yeah.
I'm very hard headed and I'm pretty aggressive about it.
Yeah, me too.
But you got to understand, most people are not like that, and most people are can be influenced to some extent. So if let's say you did a post and maybe you were leaning one way or the other on a post, and someone's like, oh, because sometimes you want to click on the comments just to see what the dialogue's going to be.
Yeah, see how crazy it's going to be.
And you click and you see that 19 out of every 20 comments is negative towards your stance.
Yeah.
Someone that isn't really confident in their beliefs would get influenced by that.
Oh, yeah.
Even if maybe when they watched your video or whatever it was, they're like, "Oh, he's totally right." Like, but you'd second guess it. And I can't remember the exact experiment, but I talked about this on one of my podcasts a while back. But what it was it was a psychological experiment where there was a bunch of people in the room, and I think they were given like a card or something, and it said something on it of like, do you think is the answer A or B or whatever it was? And they like went around the room. And let's say there was 20 people in the room, and the 20th person was the one actually getting like analyzed. All the other 19 people were plants; they were in on it.
Oh,
and
wow.
they start with the prompt, and they ask the first person, and he said, the answer is this and this, and it was very obvious. Like it should have been, B. Well, every person got to A, said A or whatever, and then they got to the 20th person, and they measured on how often did the 20th person give the correct answer versus the answer the room gave, which was clearly wrong. And I don't remember the exact results, but it was overwhelmingly showing that the person in the last position was significantly impacted by the control group, right? Wow. And it was something that, like, had you looked at it in 2 seconds, you would have been like, oh, B, obviously.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? But then you're sitting there and they're going around and you're going, oh, shit, like, I don't want to be the one outlier here.
Yeah.
Because one, you want to fit in, but then you question. So that's why I think it's so dangerous with the things like bots, but also, like we saw during a period of time, a lot of content, the knob was getting turned way down and on what would have been a opposing viewpoint. Yep. Right? I mean, their accounts were, and we have to acknowledge this. Like, you know what I mean? With Twitter and Instagram,
YouTube.
Zuckerberg admitted it and now he's openly admitted it. But he had like a Freudian slip on Rogan the first time where he was basically like, "Oh yeah, the White House is telling me, and like the FBI, it was like, wait, did you say that?
Yeah,
because that's getting into some totalitarian shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that's why I think that is such a dangerous thing, is because if the perceived public perception is this one thing, normal, reasonable people will become susceptible because they won't want to be the outlier. Yeah. Now, leaders, mavericks, people that are blaze their own trail, like probably people like you and me, that's not going to affect us because we're going to say, no, I know that's wrong. Yeah. I was raised this way and blah, blah, blah. But then we're, you know what I mean? There's only so many of us. And if the masses can get swayed, the people that are typically followers, that's where narratives can become mainstream. And before you know it, you're unrecognizable of where you were, right? Yeah. And I think that's the one thing we need to be careful on. And that goes both ways.
For sure.
But I think for a while there, man, there was a monopoly on the airwaves and I think we were all scratching our heads saying, there's no way we all think this. You talk to your neighbor, you talk to the person at the checkout counter at the grocery store. You weren't hearing this anywhere in person.
Yep.
It was only digital.
Yep.
But eventually we realized it. We're all getting played. You know what I mean? Like, no one actually thinks that. And particularly in your world, with content creators, for a while there, a lot of content creators that wanted to have a dissenting viewpoint weren't coming forward with it because of the repercussions of the platform.
Yeah.
YouTube's going to shut you down. Well, okay, well, if let's say that person's got 5 million followers on YouTube and that's how they support their family.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden we're in this crazy time and he wants to have an opposing view to the narrative. Well, guess what? He's not going to say it because he doesn't want to get deplatformed by YouTube, right? But his opinion could have carried a lot of weight in that debate. You know what I mean? So it was like it became a monopoly of viewpoints too. And that's why, as like Americans, and the idea of freedom and all this, like, it's so critical that like we don't let that slip.
100%.
Because then it's kind of like the boiling frog analogy, right? You throw the frog in a pot of boiling water, it jumps right out because it knows the water's boiling. But if you put it in room temperature water, you turn the burner on and it slowly brings to a boil. It doesn't realize it's getting boiled alive because the temperature is just slowly rising.
Getting dialed
you know
up.
what I mean? So I think. To some extent, that might be, what's going on with us, but I think, hopefully good prevails, man, because I just think there's a lot of people getting their hands in things that are it is not for the good of the country. we'll see.
Yeah, I think that there is. There's always hope for sure. I mean, things are coming back a little bit now.
Yeah.
Like I've seen some. What's it called? I've seen some YouTube things dialing back. Like I think, and I don't particularly watch the guy. There's a dude named Tim Pool. He's just known for being a very extreme right wing dude. I don't personally watch his content, but I see his posts every so often on X. And he said that some of his videos were reinstated from back during like the pandemic era when people couldn't talk about COVID stuff.
Yeah.
Because if you'd ever even mentioned COVID in a podcast, you would instantly it would be a community guideline violation.
Well, that happened to me on our 3rd episode.
Really?
And all it was we were talking about fitness. It was with Dave Castro. He was like one of the originals from the CrossFit Games.
Yeah.
And him and I were just having a casual 2 dudes talking.
Yeah.
And we were talking about COVID, and he was like, I think we should have embraced fitness more in that period because it would have been a good like way to be less susceptible to like significant symptoms.
Yeah.
And that's all he was just like, I think that was an opportunity as Americans. We could have really like reinvigorated like the emphasis on fitness and like a healthy lifestyle. And,
yeah.
Like, because
super level-headed thing to say.
Exactly. It wasn't saying, the vaccine was BS or this or that, or it was whatever. And the producers who run our podcast, like after a few weeks, they hit us up and they're like, hey, we're not getting like charting data anymore and all these things. And it's because you guys were flagged by Spotify and YouTube because it like he said COVID and it triggered it on an episode. You know what I mean?
Oh my God.
And we were literally, it was episode 3. So we're all fired up, like our
What year was that?
This was in 2025 now. That would have been like early 2023, I think. Yeah. 2023. Yeah, you know what I mean? So yes, I mean, because the producers were able to like literally see it and they like told me, and I was like, well, can we just call someone? Like, can they see context that like there was not one, we should be able to say whatever the hell we want. 2, he was literally like it was saying like we should embrace active lifestyle to like be healthier overall, and that helps all things, including COVID. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%.
Like, are we saying that we're not allowed to say that now? Just get your 9 vaccines and just march on your way and like fall in line. Is that what you'd rather me say that? I know you would, but like we weren't.
Yeah, you're not peddling nonsense. You're just like speaking from the heart. That's the dangerous thing about censorship, man. And it's also dangerous that the government was involved in that stuff, that they were putting pressure on these companies and like kicking and screaming if they didn't do that stuff. That is a dangerous thing. You should not want that no matter what side of the aisle you're on. Like you shouldn't want this side to be silenced from not being able to say their opinions, and you shouldn't want this side to be silenced no matter what they're saying. Now, the one thing is, the one difference between that, just having a discussion about opinions on stuff, is it's not inciting violence.
Yeah.
You're not inciting violence against people. Now, that's something that I don't necessarily think is considered, quote, free speech, is inciting violence against people.
Yeah.
I don't think
and I believe that is one of the guidelines of like free speech, I believe, is like, if, you know what I mean? Like hate speech, I believe, is technically allowed. Like under like, but as soon as there's it cites violence or like chaos or like, that's why you can't yell fire in a crowded theater.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Or a bomb on an airplane.
Exactly. There's guidelines to it.
There's like, hey, be an adult.
Yeah.
But you can't, that's the problem with it. It's like, there's people right now that are getting upset over not being able to essentially what they're doing is like inciting violence. Some people are like, because they're throwing around the term fascist, or like there's just folks out there that are actually encouraging to commit acts of violence against people. I've seen it. I've seen streamers doing it. I've seen people posting about it on X. I've seen people posting it on every other platform where they're like, they should take this person out or whatever. And then they're verbally communicating to their audience that people should commit acts of violence or take someone's life based on their views, based on the things that they're saying. And that is actually what fascism is. Yeah. That's actually what fascists
That's the irony of it, right?
That is the irony of it. That's actually what real fascism is. True freedom is just being able to talk about whatever you've got going on. Don't care what your opinion is, dude. I want you to be able to believe what you want to believe. That's part of being an American. Like, I want you, if you don't like something, cool. I want you to voice it, talk about it. I don't think that you should be silenced if you don't agree with whatever thing is happening. Like, no matter if I agree with you or not. That's one of the things I think is the greatest part about this country is like we can talk about things no matter what it is, have our opinions, as long as you're not encouraging people to commit acts of violence or break the law or do something illegal, then like that should be super kosher to do. But it is a very weird. It's a very weird balancing act because like there's a lot of the folks I've been seeing that have been up in arms about certain things being said, like seeing like it's like a lot of those people that are getting pissed because they're like encouraging certain types of narratives were not very vocal when people were getting banned for talking about COVID. And it's like it's like almost like a, what's the word for it? It's like, okay, you didn't want to talk about this when we were that was literally oppression, like being oppressed, not allowed to talk about something, even if you just had beliefs and viewpoints on it. People were getting fired from their jobs for it. People were like losing their livelihoods. They're getting deplatformed, debanked, all kinds of crazy stuff. And these folks, those same folks that weren't saying anything about that are now saying, because they're like, you can't just constantly call people fascists and Nazis all the time and like encourage violence against people, because you say this over and over again, people are going to start believing it. And it's like, look, you don't want people to think that everybody's a Nazi or everybody's a fascist, because obviously what do most human beings think? Nazism and fascism are evil. Yeah. As they like real actual Nazism and fascism is evil. Like we can't allow that. That can't coexist with real American society, because like here we believe in freedom of speech, freedom of expression. We don't believe on confiscating their firearms like Canada does apparently right now, which we can talk about that if you're talking about that. That's a pretty wild situation right now. But there's certain guidelines that it's like, hey, we have to just be an adult. Like you said, you can't scream fire in a busy theater. Maybe you shouldn't be. I mean, I guess at the end of the day, hurling insults at people. Okay. I don't want to ban that stuff. Like, even if you don't like somebody, you should be able to like hurl insults at them as a private citizen, have the freedom to do that. But I don't know. It's a weird area. Just like it frustrates me seeing that people are getting pissed about certain language, but not getting pissed about censorship of others.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's super, there's so much hypocrisy around it now because, and I think the Trump administration has to be really careful not to overplay their hand. Yeah. Because there's the Republicans are in control. There was a message sent across the country in that election that, hey, that we are rejecting all this BS that like we were subjected to the last 4 years. I mean, it was every swing state, and that's not normal, as we know. Yeah. Okay, so there was okay. That's the tone of the country now. I think you got to be really careful overplaying it, because we can't create martyrs out of people that were turds before. And this is just my opinion, but the Jimmy Kimmel thing. Yeah. There's the perception that the Trump administration influenced that decision now, and I don't know if that's true or not. I think it's a possibility. Obviously, when you're the president of the United States, you have a lot of influence. Sure. There's also the context of like the dude's ratings were trash. The things he was saying had nothing to do with comedy, and this was night after night. He's calling out this, and eventually, like if you're going to alienate 50% of your audience, that's just not going to be good for business, right? And like but obviously that's not what makes the airways on CNN, MSNBC. It's like, oh, he's a dictator and he's like saying who can be on the airwaves, and it's just like, all right, well, look, from a business standpoint, he was fired by his own liberal executives. Like Disney is as liberal as they come. Like it's not like he was like Trump was like, hey Disney, if you don't fire him, I'm going to like take away whatever else. Yeah, but. Even if that didn't happen, the perception is all that matters, and that gave enough CNN and MSNBC enough ammo to be like, oh, look at this oppressive dictator. Yeah. He's canceling anyone who dissents against his viewpoints. Yeah. When in reality, this is the guy who was literally on air applauding anyone that was getting canceled during COVID, any conservative voice. I mean, there's a list of them. I mean, we keep the receipts, right? Yeah. So all of a sudden now he's like a champion of free speech, when it's like, hey man, maybe in your apology you should have actually called out the fact that, hey, now that you've been on the other end of this, you realize how wrong it is to get canceled for your viewpoints.
Yeah.
And maybe you should take this time to apologize to the 10 other people who got canceled that on your own show you laughed at. You know what I mean? And applauded, you know, the Megyn Kellys, the Tucker Carlsons, and like the list goes on of like, oh, you dipshit conservative, like you finally, the chickens came home to roost.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So to me, that's what's so infuriating is like, guys, do you not forget like what we just went through in the last 5 years where it was complete monopoly to the other side? And this one guy who is not like, he's literally getting up there and using a stage that is meant to be for comedy, and he's going on political rants that have nothing to do with his show. You know what I mean? So guess what? Like, you know, he's free to say that. Well, he's free to say that in his own life.
Sure.
But when he's on stage, that's a business, right?
Yeah.
And if he's doing things that are not conducive to like good ratings and all this, he's every right to be fired. The dude makes like $30 million a year. You know what I mean? Like, so we're taking a guy who makes like $30 million a year, and now he's like the martyr. It's like, oh, what is he gonna do? He only has $200 million.
Destitute.
Yes. But you got to be really careful that you don't allow the other side, because you know what I mean. But because I think that's a big reason why what happened in November with the election was so unanimous, because I think everyday people came to their senses of, okay, like this is just not the path we want to go.
Exactly. You can't say, hey, these people should be canceled, but these people shouldn't be canceled. Everybody needs to be able to speak, but there are going to be consequences for you doing stuff when you work for a private business.
Exactly. Like if, you know, if I had a Born Primitive employee and we were at a trade show or something, and like, you know, like one of them wants to like break out a Hamas flag at a tactical event, like they're getting fired.
Yeah.
And that has nothing to do with free speech.
Yeah.
You're on the clock. This affects our business. We're an Americanly founded company. I don't stand for that bullshit. So yeah, you're gone.
Well, not only that, but I guarantee, like, you probably, as a business owner, you probably don't want to have politics involved in your business, because it's not a political business. So you probably like, hey, look, don't wear any politics shirts. I don't care if you're left or right. Don't wear any of that stuff at the events, because that's not what we're about. But if somebody did anyway after you told them, you as a private business owner have every right to fire them for it, no matter what belief system.
100%. And I think that's where it gets blurred, but it doesn't matter. Like the people on the one side are gonna they will weaponize it, because the normal people that are receiving this information aren't gonna have like an articulate back and forth of like, oh wait, hold on, like let's look at both sides of this. Wait, this is the same guy that for 5 years on his airways was applauding every person that got canceled. Wait, his ratings are dog shit because he's alienated 50% of his audience for years on his show, so no one tunes in anymore. Because after a few of those, you're like, all right, dude, like I'm tuning in to get some comedic relief, a couple laughs, you know what I mean? And you've seen it anywhere at the NFL, like all these entities, you just get exhausted. You're like, all right, I'm turning it all off because so it's like, okay, you finally, the chickens finally came home to roost, and now you're this martyr that you're making, tens of millions of dollars. So but I do think like, the Trump administration has to be a little careful with making sure that isn't the perception, because he's obviously strong-handed, he's assertive, like he will call people out, right? 100%. And then there's been some lawsuits filed, which he's winning all of them, because I think he just won one with YouTube,
YouTube I think owes him like what, $25 million or something, or $50 million.
Yeah, but now again, the left will weaponize that and say, look, he is using his position of power to force these companies to settle, because if they don't settle, then he's going to find other backdoor ways to go at them. And it's like, no, guys, this is like, you don't you deplatform the guy, you did all this stuff, you know what I mean? So in with CBS, like how they literally manipulated the Kamala Harris interview. Have you seen the original interview? They released like the unedited. They were literally taking clips that were completely unrelated to the answer, but the answer was so bad that in post-production they had to say, okay, we have to salvage this somehow, because if we release this unreleased, and I think, and I don't understand this fully either, but with like the FCC, if it's funded by like taxpayer dollars, because part of it, originally I was like, all right, well, CBS clearly like they're left, so like, yes, it sucks that it came out that they did that, but like, what do you expect? But there's different regulations for like the CBSs and the NBCs and the ABCs, which I don't fully understand. But I think under FCC regulation, because these networks are getting funded by taxpayer dollars, like they have to be like partial. They
have to be nonpartisan.
They do, yes. So that showed a clear deviation. I mean, because literally, imagine in post production being like, okay, we're going to like take sentences that Bear said. Like imagine for this podcast, if you're going to take something I told you in like the 4th minute and like now insert it into this answer, you know what I mean? Like just because like, wow, that guy bombed, you know?
Yeah.
Clearly. So, I mean, I just think there was a lot of things that were so overt. But you know, for the things like the Jimmy Kimmel, let him rant his trash because guess what? The ratings are going to continue to fall, and like, but now it's like you've almost like reinvigorated a guy like that. Same thing with this guy in New York. Like, okay, in the 20th century, over 100 million people died to communism. Literally 100 million. Like, guys, open up a history book, read about Mao Zedong. Literally, you know, we talk about
more than 100. Yeah, it might be like 300 million.
I'm just saying
it's a
it's
lot.
a 9-figure amount of deaths from communism.
Yeah.
And now we have a guy coming into New York and saying, I'm a communist. Okay, guys, let him do it. Let him do it because like it's the worst. Like the fact that they think that's good for their position. I'm like, you guys are such idiots, right? Oh, you're gonna like you're gonna make all these grocery stores all of a sudden owned by the city of New York, and you're gonna like make the housing. Like, good luck, guys, because guess what? We have 100 years of history on that method, and hundreds of millions of people died from it.
Yeah.
Okay,
well, you look at what happened in Ukraine and Russia, and like the Bolshevik Revolution, man. Oof.
And that wasn't that long ago. It's like, guys, we have a historical example right here. You can look at, read about Mao Zedong, right? Like, it's like, but that's why I think, okay, you know, don't overplay the hand. Let that dipshit run. He's probably gonna win. You're gonna see what's gonna happen in New York, and you're gonna have some people that are gonna be moderates that are gonna say, wow, I really thought I maybe sided with that, but man, in theory that sounds great, but that idealistic view of the world, it doesn't actually work in practicality. Okay, now I'm gonna vote the other way.
However, you have to let him do it.
Exactly.
You have to allow him the freedom to run, and the people need to learn mistakes from it. And if they don't learn from it and it crumbles, let it crumble.
Exactly.
That's part of learning. That's how you get better.
I almost feel bad for like the people in New York, but in a way I don't, because it's like, I mean, they're so extreme on one side. It's like, okay, you're about to get the idealistic, you know, vision that you all think you want.
Yeah, the exact version.
Okay, you want communism? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Here, but it won't be because they're still in a, you know, a state in a country. Like, it's not like all of a sudden New York is locked down in a communism. But I think there will be enough components. Like and I don't even like. Again, this is where I don't know enough. Like, does he even have the legal authority to now say, okay, grocery stores, like you can't make a profit, or hey, landlord, you can't raise your rent. And I think there's obviously components to it that like I see where they're coming as far as like if the rent prices are insane and
which
like
they are,
you know what I mean? Like so okay, there's definitely a problem but like, you know, just saying, okay, we're going to take something from the playbook that, you know, hundreds of millions of people died from and just, okay, that's the solution. I don't think is it. But you know, the idea of like the affordable housing, like, these are definitely things that like still need to be addressed. I'm not like hand waving that. And that's where, you know, you get in complex conversations of like not letting private equity firms like acquire properties. Like,
that's probably not good.
Like let the common man buy property. So like it keeps things in check, and, you know, so everything isn't a rental property all of a sudden. And, you know, you're just, you know,
we're just living in a rental society. Like, no. We don't need corporations buying private family homes. Like,
so that's where, you know, I think capitalism, like there are components of it that like, you know what I mean? Like, you have to let the free market win, but like when it's like Vanguard and BlackRock and State Street like buying up like 80% of like property in the country, okay, that's capitalism
run rampant.
It is
you can't
because
have
you know
that.
what are they like 70% of the S&P 500, those three companies.
That's what they had monopolies broken up for back in the day. I think during Teddy Roosevelt, maybe, I can't remember. They broke up monopolies specifically because they were concerned about that.
So but now I'm going on a rant, so I'll shut up for a minute.
No. You know, I appreciate it. Like, at the end of the day, like, again, it goes back to this. Like, I feel like, hey, dude, you're free to feel how you want, talk about what you want. If you feel consequences from the owner of your business as a result, then that's between two private people. Now, is there influence outside of that? I don't know. I mean, maybe not. I don't have a clue. There's no way for me to like know all the ins and outs, all of it. There's so much going on. There's so much information. It's impossible to know everything, you know? I do think that, you know, what I think is probably going to happen with New York, because I do think he's going to get elected because it seems like he's got the overwhelming support to win. and then
which is crazy.
It's just it's
crazy.
very interesting to see like where we've gone with that, because at one point you had Rudy Giuliani as the mayor, right, back in like 2001 when 9/11 happened, and you went from that, and he was taking on the mob and everything like that, and like just like getting the crime down in the city, and then now you've got the current situation, and a lot of these major cities in the United States have kind of leaned in that direction. I don't know if that's because of like the fact that a lot of education centers have been located there, because it's also a lot of private business located in cities too. So you always think, at least in my head, I would think, well, because there's so much business, surely there's people that would like want to be taxed less and be more profitable and make more money and all this other stuff, which kind of becomes more in line with, you know, a little bit more conservative belief systems, at least when I think about private business owners. But I think what's going to happen is he'll get in and like either it'll work or it won't work. I have my own feelings about it. But I mean, you know, like if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Just the way it is. We're gonna find out one way or another. And once if things get to a point where it's so bad, like you said, people are gonna be like, "Oh, this is painful," and pain is a big motivator, you know. So maybe sometimes people got to go through a little bit of pain to realize that that's not the best approach to something. You know, you got to you touch the burning hot pan and you burn the crap out of your hand, and you're like, oh wow, I don't want to do that again. Maybe that's what like New Yorkers need to do. I don't know. I'm definitely concerned about it for sure, because that's like where the New York Stock Exchange is. Like that could have a ripple effect and impact the country.
Yeah.
Or what they'll do is a lot of those businesses will be like, cool, I'm bouncing.
Yep.
I'm out.
Yep.
I'll see you later. I'm going to Texas.
And I think that's what I like the response to be to any of these things. Hey, you don't like Jimmy Kimmel? Just don't watch him. Oh,
yeah.
Oh, you got mad because
exactly
you got mad because Target had tuck friendly swimsuits and had a tag next to the groin that said tuck friendly.
Yeah.
Like, okay, then shop Walmart, right?
Yeah, sure.
And
whatever.
Hey, you don't like Bud Light? Shop Miller Lite, right? But the problem is in some of these, the examples I just gave, there's an easy substitute, right? So like, hey, if you don't like Target, go to Walmart. If you don't like Bud Light, drink Coors Light. You know, it's one or the other.
Yeah.
When you look at things like YouTube and Meta, there's not an alternative. Like
it's hard.
They've tried to create alternatives, like with Truth Social and like and
Rumble.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But it would be like same thing with like your iPhone. Not now one could say, well, Samsung's an obvious alternative, but like so many people, it's like Apple could do anything on the earth. I'm probably still getting the iPhone, right? Because I'm so used to it. So I think that's why, you know, the best way to respond is just to you know, not give them your business, or hey, if you're an employer, move out. I mean, we saw that in California; it's still happening.
Oh yeah, still happening.
And that eventually will carry a lot of weight, because that done in aggregate will create real impact. Because even like people like Disney, you know what I mean? Like they have shareholders, right? And they probably all slant one way, it seems.
Yeah.
But when you spend $500 million on a movie and it bombs because the main actress won't shut the hell up about Hamas, eventually they're going to say, hey, like, I'm all for her, but like, hey, we need to have some social media guidelines about, like, you know what I mean? Or hey, like maybe like the gay Buzz Lightyear like wasn't the best look. You know what I mean? Because like, you know, a dad wants to take it's like, and it's again, the problem is in those situations, they do such a good job about making that seem that like, okay, now people, oh, you're not for a gay Buzz Lightyear, you're against homosexuality. It's like, no, guys, it's not it at all. I'm actually I get zero concerns about where someone lands. Like literally zero.
Don't care.
Yeah,
do whatever you want.
Do whatever you want. Like, you know what I mean? Like, but hey, if I have a 5-year-old and I'm going to the movie theater, I don't want to have to explain the guy that has a dress on, right? And that is not an extreme view. Like, and there's going to come a point where that conversation is happening, and that's okay. And like, you know, I have a little girl, and like, you know, I'm going to make sure that she always knows that, hey, no matter what someone's skin color is, their religion, their sexual orientation, we treat them the same way. We view them for their actions and their character, and it stops there.
Content and character.
Exactly.
That's what it's about.
Now, that does not mean that people that check a certain box are exempt from criticism, right?
Sure.
And I think that's another thing we've gotten wrong. It's all of a sudden, it's like, oh, because you check that box, I'm not allowed to criticize you. It's like, well, what I'm criticizing you about has nothing to do with that.
Yeah.
But, oh, you're protected. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's no such thing as protected classes, like really realistically, but there are Whereas like you're talking about, like if a person with certain specific demographics does something bad, you're not supposed to talk about it or something like that. And it's like, you can't have that, dude. Like I remember when I was in like the 1990s, like nobody ever talked about a lot of this stuff. Now, does that mean like for example, I don't remember anybody talking about race in the 1990s, like the early 90s. I just don't remember it. Like, I mean, I had friends of all demographics from all different walks of life, different religions, different skin colors. Nobody cared. We just all hung out with each other. We were all Americans, you know, like nobody gave a shit. It wasn't until like the 2008, 9, 10 where it started really starting to pop up a lot more. But the problem is that I think about is like all this stuff, I feel like it gets brought to the surface a lot and talked about a lot to create division, to divide people instead of
100%.
allowing people to come together, because we all have a lot more in common with each other than we don't. I mean, if you cut yourself and somebody else cut themselves, like you're going to bleed the same color.
That's
you
right.
know? You know, like at the end of the day, we're all bleeding the same. We're all going to bleed the same color. When our blood gets oxygenated, it's going to turn red, and that's just the way it is. You know, but it's frustrating for me because like, you know. It's like you're saying, if you got kids, like I don't necessarily want to have that conversation or explain that. That doesn't mean that they can't put the movie out. Put the movie out, dude. I'm just not going to go see it.
Yeah.
You know, and if it bombs as a result, well, then that's your general consensus as to like what kind of movies to put out. Like I don't think that anybody should be told they can't do something if it's not illegal. Go for it, dude. Like I don't, and then you will see the success, or you'll get the clientele that are interested in that. And if the people aren't, then they'll go away. Like there's guaranteed a very loyal fan base to Jimmy Kimmel and all these other late night talk show guys. I'm sure they've got a lot of people that watch them specifically for the types of rants that they're doing because that's what they like.
Yeah.
And hey, dude, I'm cool. All for it. Like if that's something you enjoy, like I want you to be able to enjoy that. But if his ratings become so bad, or somebody's ratings become so bad because like there's not enough viewership because not enough people like it, and then the boss is like, hey, look, we can't afford to, it's not sustainable from a business standpoint to keep you on, then that's totally different, right? Yeah. But like, again, it should be, you know, like a free open society. You're free to win, free to fail, free to succeed, free to fail, but it's on you. Like, and if you want to choose to talk about those things, then you know, you're going to feel the consequences, whether they're good or bad consequences, you know. But that's what I like about America is like you can do that here. That's all allowed here. Now, is there going to be undue influence from things? Sure. Always going to be some sort of undue influences in different areas. But I like to at least think, you know, from my impressionable pie in the sky look at life. You know, I generally think that most of the time things work out the way they're supposed to, because human beings are meant to be free. Yeah. They're meant to be able to like live free lives and pursue whatever makes them happy. You know what I mean? And regardless of how that is, like, again, I want people to pursue. That's one of the things I think is so great about the country is like you have the freedom to pursue happiness. Like whatever that means, as long as like happiness doesn't come from like committing murder or something crazy. You know what I'm saying? But because we got to have some guidelines. But I don't know. You talk about that stuff forever. It's just like it's easy to get frustrated with because like it gets everybody riled up. And again, those are the types of things and the types of like topics that get a lot of clicks and engagement and drive narratives and get shares because people are like, they get up in arms about stuff because of tribalism. Because there's a lot of tribalism on both sides. Very easy to see. You know, there's probably people out there that think this side is like never done anything wrong and they're never going to do anything wrong. They always do everything right. And there's probably people on this side that feel like, nope, they've never done anything wrong. They're always doing everything right. But I think what's more important is things like this, like people being able to have a reasonable conversation, meet in the middle, look at both sides objectively and be like, hey, you know, are these guys always right? No, probably not. You know, maybe they could have done this better. Are these guys over here all right? No, probably not. They probably could have done this better. But like I said, people were like, that takes brain power. And it also makes you have to think about things. You have to think through things. You can't just like put blanket statements over stuff and say like everything over here is bad or everything over here is bad, you know? And critical thinking is what's it called? It's quickly becoming an extinct character trait, which I think we could desperately use. You know, people need to be able to like think for themselves, especially in nowadays in today's day and age, man, where you're being force fed all this information in your algorithm all the time. we desperately need people who can critically think and be like, that's a little funky. That doesn't sound right to me. Like, because like you said, when you go out and you you would think if you looked on Instagram for a day that you'd think everybody was like murdering each other and that the world was burning and everything was falling apart. But you go out and you talk to like your neighbor, or you go down to the grocery store, people are pretty friendly. Like, obviously like barring like super impoverished areas that are like hurting real bad, but most people are like genuinely like chill, easy to talk to, not like rioting, not like, doing crazy stuff. But it just seems like everything is very extreme all the time because we're seeing all the extremes on camera, on our phones all the time when we're walking around, I try to be cognizant of that when I'm scrolling. And like, if I catch myself like scrolling for too long, I'm yep, that's enough. Put it down,
Yep. No, absolutely. And what I wrestle with, because like, obviously you have a platform as well, is like, to what extent, because part of me goes, okay, I'm going to get mine. I'm going to live my life.
Yeah.
I'm going to give back, and that's part of it. But like, I'm not going to put my neck on the line for like, and potentially face like, repercussions of my own opinions because, hey, I got a business to run and like, I want to raise a family and all this. Yeah. But then usually that gets overturned by the other side. It's like, all right, well, you got to stand for something. And, you got to, and examples would be the things of like that I think are so non-negotiable, like all this like gender stuff that's getting pushed on our kids. What I mean? That's when it's like, all right, hey, are you a man? Oh, you're just gonna roll over? So and like for example, like,
well, especially when you have kids, that changes the whole dynamic.
And that's why that is one thing, because I have a daughter now. I'm like, if she's in school and I hear that her third grade teacher is hijacked her platform to infiltrate all their little impressionable brains and says like, oh, there's actually more than two genders, and hey, you can be a boy, Ren, this and that. Like I will be their worst enemy. No, I will be the guy going into the school board meetings like a silverback gorilla. I'll get my 3 minutes and I will destroy them. Yeah. And I'm gonna get the parents to say, hey, where's the rest of the dads at? Oh, you're afraid because you're gonna be labeled a bigot. Yeah. Oh, because CNN says you're a bigot if you're against that. Yeah. And it's like, I use the analogy. It's like, imagine all the stupid phases we had when we were kids. Like imagine like maybe you had a goth phase, maybe you didn't, but like, I look at some back at my old pictures, just how we dressed, like, in like, I remember the shell necklace phase, and a white shell necklace,
or the hemp necklaces,
and all these. And I'm trying to put some comedic relief into this, but imagine all the different phases you go through as a child, where you're insecure, you don't have confidence, particularly when you're going through puberty. I remember I was terrified of girls until I was like 16.
Oh, me too, man.
And and so like you have all these phases. So imagine you have like a 10-year-old girl, 11-year-old girl. She's starting to kind of go through like bodily changes, and she's starting to get insecure about that. And she has like her 7th grade teacher telling her, oh, well, that's because you should be a man. And all of a sudden, oh, we're going to put you on puberty blockers and you're going to do this and you're going to do that. And you're doing like an irreversible thing when it's like, imagine again, let's take the kids that went through a goth phase, right? And they had the black mohawk and the black fingernails and the dog collar necklace and all this stuff and the big Jenko jeans and the chains. Yeah. Imagine if you were to say, okay, we're going to take this and we're going to make it permanent. You're going to look like this until you're 90 years old. Like, how absurd you know what I mean? And but your parents, they don't get a say. We're going to take you and we're going to take you to the doctor, and this is how you will look for the next 90 years. Your nails will always be black. You're always going to have that dog collar on your neck and this and that, right? You'd think it was absurd because okay, this is a phase. Sure. They're going through it. They're kids. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, okay, now take that and multiply it by 1,000. And you're doing that with gender. And so it's like, oh, so now you're telling me that I'm not tolerant because I'm going to fight for that? Yeah. Because I as a 37-year-old man, am able to advise a 10-year-old that is not a smart decision for their life. Yeah. But this radicalized teacher is able to tell her that? Yeah, get the fuck out of here.
Well, not only that, but it's like, hey, do you want your daughter to like have people, like men in their bathroom with them?
Exactly, and that's another one.
That's like a protection.
Good luck on that. Yeah, and it's like what I'm saying. Where the hell are the dads at? You know what I mean? Oh, you don't want to be labeled the bigot by all the school parents. Well, guess what? There's 90% of the other parents are thinking the exact same thing, but they're cowards just like you are, and they're not going to say anything. So a couple guys step forward. So that's what I get as like at the same time, we need to be fucking leaders for our communities.
Yeah.
And we still need to make sure we're not getting influenced by like, oh shit, maybe I'm guilty of like, you know what I mean? But for this one, like this gender thing,
that's a hard line.
No one on planet Earth, I don't care where you get your news, can convince me that an 11-year-old girl should get put on puberty blockers for an irreversible thing.
Yeah.
And anyone that thinks that, you have to check yourself on where you've gotten your information to come to the conclusion that you think that is the right thing to do, right? And not only that, to then go on offense and say that anyone that believes that is this bigot, and that's what they've gotten really good at. Oh, you're the bigot, you're intolerant. No, guys, that has nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
If when that person's 20, they want to go do that and go down to Key West and dress and drag and do all the crazy shit, that's actually fine, because by then I'm gonna get mine and I'm gonna raise a family. Like do you whatever makes you happy.
Yeah.
But you're not gonna influence a 10-year-old. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And to me, it blows my mind that there are people that genuinely would hear what I just said and be like, oh my God, like that intolerant, man that doesn't, and it's like, no, guys, this is really basic. And 20 years ago, we weren't talking about this.
Yeah.
So you guys have manufactured this into mainstream, and now I have to fight it because you're making it a thing. Yeah. You look at how many people, the percentage of trans people in the last few years, it's like up like 8,000%. It's because you're getting in people's heads. And again, like if you're 30 years old and you want to, like, it is, but then you see all these stories of people that were kids and now they're going on the floor of Congress and being like, I was this doctor, in they influenced me, and now I'm having all these. Oh, now you're 18 and realizing that maybe you want to be able to sleep with, if you're a girl, like maybe you want to have be able to have a child. All these other things. Yeah. It's like, I wish I had been getting advised properly when I was 12 years old. Of course you were, because you were 12. You didn't know any better.
You got to let kids be kids, man, and you also got like. One of the things I've learned is you don't mess with people's kids. You don't mess with people's children, man. Like you really can't. Like, there's a lot of weird stuff that's been going on with that for the past like five, I would say like 4 or 5 years I've been seeing for sure. And you got to be real careful with that kind of stuff, because people are going to be protective of their children. And like you said, though, at the end of the day, like, dude, if your brain is fully developed, you're 25 years old, your brain is finished developing. Do whatever you want that makes you happy. If you feel happier being this or that, whatever, dude, I'm all about it. Like, that's part of what it makes America great. Yeah. I love that about this country. But you can't be messing with kids, man. You got to let kids be kids. Let them play outside. They'll figure it out. Like, I know a lot of women out there who were tomboys when they were younger, and they like to wear all the guys' clothes, and they only hung out with dudes, and they had a lot of behaviors that guys had and all this stuff, and they grew up to be like amazing women that ended up having families.
Maybe
and all this
super
stuff.
girly now.
Maybe super girl. Yeah, exactly. Like maybe they're like CrossFit. Maybe they're like CrossFit athletes now. And the people go through phases. Let people grow up, and then once they're like actually fully developed brains and they're adults, like do whatever you want, bro. So that's like, but that's another one of those things that was like kind of pushed for a while from one side or another, right? And like there's also probably like a lot of deplatforming and stuff for having strong opinions on that one too.
Yeah.
And it's just it comes back to like, look, hey man, I want anybody to like, we got to have discussions about these things. If you can't talk about stuff, like that is a lot more dangerous than having a conversation, not fighting people over it. Just being like, hey, no, this is a hard line in the sand for me. I disagree with it, and I will there's nothing that is going to change my opinion on that. Yeah. And there's something else saying like, I'm going to commit acts of violence for you speaking in this thing. Like, do I agree with you at all? No. I think that is a disgusting thing, and I'm sure there's people probably feel like that about me for things I say too. But that doesn't mean I'm like gonna want that person to receive. But it depends. Like. The thing with kids, man, it's like, it's like folks that try to talk about the whole minor attracted person thing, dude. God. That's a hard line in the sand for me too. I'm like, no, I don't think so, dude. I don't think that's a real thing. You're making up something that's fake, dude. and that kind of thing is like those types of situations. And there's been a lot of weird stuff with that one too. I've seen people talk about. I'm like, no. I think we should just all agree as as society, like you leave kids alone, period, for everything, everything.
Yes.
You leave kids alone unless you're trying to educate them on, basic liberal arts studies degree in school. Like teach them about history, math, science, reading, writing, arithmetic. Leave it at that, and then maybe you teach them how to play baseball, or you teach them like bowling, or you teach them how to do Olympic lifting, or Roman Greco wrestling, or what, you know what I'm saying, whatever it is. You just leave people's kids alone. I think that's a good rule of thumb. I think we could all most normal people can. Regular human beings can kind of like come to a general consensus on. But anyway, so I know we got some heavy conversations and topics that we're both very passionate about certain things. A lot of people are, and rightfully so. Again, because when it comes to kids, like people are very passionate about taking care of their children and raising their children to lead the lives that they want them to be able to lead, and like ultimately they want them to be safe. They want them to grow up happy. They want them to be able to like have a family of their own one day. They want them to have all of their needs met, be able to eat well, have a good roof over their heads, basic normal stuff that like as a human being you want for your kids. But I want to kind of do a shift, even though this is kind of like a hard shift. It's like throwing it into gear without hitting the clutch. But we'll do it. You just kind of burn your clutch, just bucking in the truck.
Yeah, we've all been there.
Yeah. But so one of the big reasons that Bear you came down here is because I wanted you to kind of talk on like this initiative, this push that you guys are going to be doing as Born Primitive to help veterans, specifically with medical bills. And what's the push called? Is there a name for it? You guys?
Yeah, we actually called it. We've coined it Operation Debt of Gratitude. So
Debt of Gratitude.
Debt has a pun, which I'll explain. Why, but. For us at Born Primitive, like from the very beginning, even though, as you guys heard, like when we're in the garage days, the platform wasn't as big. We always try to do some good to give back. Yeah. The brand has always been patriotic and unapologetic about that, but also like acknowledging the service of our men and women, in military and law enforcement and all of our first responders. So we've always tried to give back, and that would come in the form of, a financial, commitment to charities and things like that. I think the fact that I was active duty hopefully validated the ethos of the company as well. Yeah. It wasn't just a punchline for us. So this, as the platform has grown, the bar, we've tried to raise the bar and what that commitment looks like. So last year, I came up with the idea of, hey, what if we could pay off a bunch of medical bills for veterans? There's a company that had reached out to me. It's called Forgive Co. Okay. Eric, he was an offensive lineman at Georgetown, and I was a middle linebacker at Yale. So we had actually played against each other. Oh, and that's ultimately how he got me to respond to an email, because I kept ignoring him because I get a million emails, as I'm sure you do. And he found game tape of Yale versus Georgetown, and I got a one-handed interception that game, and he found that clip and sent it to me. And I was like, all right, dude, I'll do a call with you. Like, what do you got? So
that's funny.
So that was kind of funny. That was like that was like July of 2024.
A one-handed interception.
Yeah, but it got deflected. It honestly wasn't that impressive. The defensive lineman got the credit because it was like it was a duck because it had been deflected. So I just had to catch it. But I think I had my hand tied up because I was like fighting around a block or something. I don't know, whatever it was. And so he sent that, and he linked up and said, hey, we're this organization, and that we basically help like pay off debt. So like if you ever wanted to like have a charitable impact, like we could help you do that. And at first I was kind of like, all right, kind of cool concept, but in a way it kind of went against a little bit of the ethos of the company of like, we were very anti like victim mentality and this and that. And I was like, why do I just pay off someone's like bills? Yeah. But I said, well, hold on. Like, what if we thought about bills that were like outside of people's control? Like, for example, medical debt. Like that's not something you deliberately incur, because usually that happens because, if you get sick, of course, you didn't just be like, oh, I'm going to get sick today. Or if you get in a car accident, it's never intentional. Yeah. And you just have to kind of deal with whatever the bill is that comes, because of course, whatever care you're getting is also not on you. Like if you need some crazy surgery because you're bleeding out, like it's going to happen and the bill's going to come and you're going to have to just respond to that. Yeah. So I said, hey, could you, like, how specific can you guys get on the data? I said, could you do medical bills as well as like veterans only? And he said, give me 24 hours. I think we could, but like, his dad is like the owner. And so he said, let me get with Craig and I'll get back to you. So he got me, he's like, hey, good news. Because veterans have a DOD ID number, we can actually filter that, as well as then there's classifications of debt. Medical is one of them. So we could basically apply those two filters, and we could basically find giant lists of people who have outstanding bills that meet your criteria that you could help pay off their bills.
Where are they pulling this data from?
However they do it, because they get plugged into like the people that are like the debt collectors.
Oh,
right?
okay.
So basically, they approach the debt collectors and say, "Hey, we want to get some of the debt off of your books." So Eric explained to me how it worked, and so he said, "Yeah, that's something we could do." So I was like, "Well, let's do it this year," because typically we would cut a check to charity every Veterans Day, and like we would do other stuff throughout the year, like around 9/11 and a few other things to support military and law enforcement and first responder charities. And but I said, hey, let's make our Veterans Day campaign this year. Like that'll be the theme. It'll be all about veteran medical bills, and we're going to donate, 100% of profits for a 4-day window, and it'll end on Veterans Day. And like we'll see. Hopefully, we can get our consumers fired up to come shop a cool cause, and then we'll get be able to have a cool couple feel good stories for people that are going into Christmas debt free. Yeah. So that's what we did. So last year we tried to do the goal was to do $5 million in total debt. We paid off 2.5. Like quietly before the campaign, because I wanted to get some people in. Like, I wanted there to be some recipients during the campaign that we could speak about of like, hey, this is the real impact, which was really cool. So like on November 10th of last year, we were able to notify a Marine on the Marine Corps' birthday, November 10th, that his debt was $183,000, and we were able to tell him it was wiped.
$183,000.
He was, I guess, he had been partially paralyzed. He's a single father of 3. He's out now, so he's a veteran. But yeah, former Marine, and that was just one of many really cool stories. I had another guy write me a letter, basically said. He's basically getting ready to kill himself. And he was asking God for any sign to continue, just give me a nudge. And he got his debt relief letter the next day. And so he hand wrote me a letter, and I have it hand wrote it, and it's on a shitty piece of
college roll paper.
And like a yellow legal pad, and I have it framed on my desk now. Because cool, he got himself together, checked himself into rehab, and then he was at rehab. So we found out where he was, and we sent him a bunch of stuff at rehab for Christmas, because he was in rehab by himself. So we sent him like $3,000 worth of clothes, to show up on Christmas for him to have something to open.
That's cool.
So little things like that, man. I was able to personally call quite a few of the recipients. That really humanized it for me, because initially this was just like an idea of oh, that would be cool. But when you actually get down to the micro level and you interact with these people, I remember there was another girl I called. Her debt wasn't that much. It was like $12,000, but she was a single mother of 2 and had gotten a really bad car accident. So she had to relearn all of her basic skills. It wasn't like her therapy to relearn how to walk and stuff. I guess just wasn't fully covered. So she was like, hey, with my income, I'm already working 2 jobs, I would have never paid that back. And what happens when you go to collections is you got people bugging you. They're sending you mail. They're calling you from different phone numbers. Your credit score tanks. Usually goes below 600. So if you try to sign a lease or get a car loan, there's all these downstream effects that really affect you. And then a lot of times your wages will get garnished, so you're paying 30% garnish off of your paycheck every month until it's paid off. So it can really affect people. And it can be kind of scary too. Imagine having a bunch of people calling you saying, hey, you got to pay this bill or this bill. And, and you're running a household by yourself and working 2 jobs, and you got a kid that's sick, and, this and that, and daycare's calling. And you imagine, as a dad, I can relate to some extent of just having one, what the extra stress that is. Yeah. So we did the 4-day sprint. Honestly, the response was incredible. I got to go on Fox and Friends, and that blew it up, and we had a bunch of people promoting it and posting about it just because it was a cool thing.
This was last year?
Yeah.
That's cool, man.
So we ended up, the goal was to hit 5 million, and again, I was firing from the hip, just screw it, let's just throw out a number. And so when we came back to work after Veterans Day, my brother's our CFO. It was such a strong response from the public that we both looked at each other like, hey, we got to increase that pledge now that the campaign had concluded. So we ended up doing 11 million in total.
$11 million.
Yeah. So it was about just under 6,000 veterans we paid off their bills before Christmas.
That's wild.
Every one of them got a certified letter in the mail saying that this is official, you're good to go. And we again, I was able to call a lot of them, which is really neat. Very moving for me. So that was, big success, a feel good moment for us. And again, like, reaffirming like the promise that, okay, I have been very fortunate with the platform we have built. A lot of it was luck. A lot of it was just being dumb enough to not know any better and being, tenacious and, hard charging. And like, it eventually kind of became something. And now it's like, okay, I have a responsibility now because this is a 1 in a million outcome. And, now, it's on us to make sure we're at least doing some good.
Yeah.
Kind of on a side note, I've noticed a lot of the brands that are in my space that, allegedly speak to our type of people, our audience that are pro-America and pro-veteran, pro-first responder.
Yeah.
They're printing money and they're not actually doing anything of good for those communities. You know what I mean? And that's always rubbed me the wrong way. And I'm not gonna say names because I'm not here to do that.
But that's something that like I've wanted to do too. That's one of the reasons why I work so damn hard, because like obviously you can't give money away if you don't have the money to give away, but you have to build a business. But like that's one of the reasons that I got into this thing in the first place, is so I could give back and help people, because there's so many folks that slip through the cracks in the veteran community, veteran space, just from, like things that are not covered. Like if like an active duty service member's parents died, well, their parents are not covered by anything. Like they're not covered under TRICARE,
of course.
So how are they going to pay for that? Well, they're paying for it out of pocket. Well, service members don't make that much money, as you well know, so there's like always these things that could be like little gaps that could be covered by the community. Are we responsible to do this? No, but we should feel obligated to help each other, because like there's enough of us that you've seen it's a double-edged sword. Like enough of us are tearing each other down, especially when people become successful in our space. Everybody's just like dumping buckets of feces on them because they're just so, there's just a lot of hate. But at the same time, we can do a lot to help each other. And I feel like it makes me feel good, and like I have a great level of gratification if I can do something to actually have a positive impact on somebody else's life. And I would imagine you feel the same way, especially after having these phone calls and these face-to-faces with people, when you see these problems that folks are facing. Like, and a lot of times it's just outside of their control, man. Stuff happens, and I feel obviously like an affinity to this community more so than others, because it's my tribe, it's my family. Same for you, So
so it was a big success, but in a way it was bittersweet, because after it concluded, we started getting a lot of messages from veterans saying, "Hey, I'm a single mother of this, and I got my they didn't pay my bill. It's $60,000. Can you help this and that?" And the way we do this, it's totally randomized, and it's through like an entity. Like I can't just be like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Plus, like when you're getting those, like you just can't do it.
You can't manage
you know
it.
What I mean? So while it was like a feel good, high five moment of like we made a big impact, I immediately, especially in the competitive nature that I, carry, I was like, okay, we need to make this bigger.
Yeah.
How can we do more? Because there's so many people we couldn't help this year. So what I did is I actually went out to Salt Lake City, and I went on the Black Rifle Coffee podcast with Evan Hafer,
nice.
the co-founder.
Is that where you just came from?
No, this was last year.
Okay, gotcha.
And when we went off air and the cameras turned off, I said, "Hey man, 60-second elevator pitch. We just did this thing. It blew me away. The response was incredible. I know you guys do a ton of good for veterans, and like in first like you guys have kind of set the standard, I think.
Yeah.
Why don't you go in on it with us next year?" I said, "I want to do this again. I want to re-jock and come out swinging and make it even bigger."
Let's go.
And it was an immediate yes. I gave him the cliff notes of how it works, and hey, this is a professional entity. Like it's not some weird like,
you can trust we're not going to scam you.
And so he gave me the yes. And then I flew back out there in the spring to plan with his team on like the execution.
That's cool.
And of course integrated my team. So the goal this year. So we've already paid off $5 million a couple months ago. So I always want there to be skin in the game, but also I want people to be like already have received the relief to use as part of the storytelling from when we actually kick off the campaign. So we've already done 5. The goal is to combine to do 25. Okay. So we would go 50-50 on it. So 12 and a half each. I selfishly, I hope it's more than that, but I don't want to overpromise. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
I don't want to not hit the goal. But I'm
Yeah.
hoping when the dust settles, when the campaign's over, we can I can call their CFO up and be like, hey, what do you think? Like, let's chip in. I mean, I can't promise that. Like, we'll see, because that's still a huge goal.
Yeah.
So that's what we're gonna do. So I think by the time this will be live, but from November 7th through the 11th is Veterans Day. We're going to pledge 100% of profits to get to that goal. That'll be from bornprimitive.com. And then since Black Rifle's matching it, anything on blackriflecoffee.com will be a part of that as well.
Okay.
So like if you need a guilt-free reason to shop and support a really cool cause, obviously we got holiday coming up. So maybe a good gift idea if you want a story attached to, maybe a gift you give someone.
Are you guys going to have customized merch that's just for this campaign?
No, we won't. It's just, hey, just go to the site, pick out something you want. We have something for everyone. You called out, we have the activewear stuff, but I'm wearing our Woodsman stretchy flannel right now. We got jeans. We got
everything.
We got training shoes. We have hunting outdoor stuff. We have tactical. Sports bras, leggings, joggers, sweatpants. Like literally, there's something for everyone.
Yeah.
So I think if people have been looking to restock their wardrobe, but of course get some good coffee, this is a great time to do it. And all of this will be affecting real Americans from all over the country, from all walks of life, all political views, all races, all genders, all, you know what I mean? That's why, you know what I mean? Like that's why I love it's random. A lot of these people we're helping, I probably maybe have, disagree with a lot on viewpoint, but hey, you're still an American and we're all on the same team. And that's why, particularly at a time as divided as we are, I think it's good to kind of have some feel good moments like this.
Yeah, dude, we need some good feel good moments, especially there's a lot of polarization, especially even with the veteran community on a lot of issues. Because there's a lot of big changes happening right now with the changes coming from the Pentagon, a lot of changes coming from policies and all kinds of stuff. So this is a good way for us to. I think we can all kind of come together on this. Be like, yes, paying off medical debt from veterans is a good thing. Nobody disagrees with that. We can all agree on that.
Yeah.
So that's definitely cool.
And it was really well received. We didn't get any negativity last year. Like, thank God. It was like everyone was super fired up. And that's like, I got to stress to the customers, like they're the ones that make this possible, because when the response is that massive, that makes me be able to call a guy like an Evan and say, hey man, go in on this. Like had it flopped, I'd probably be like, okay, that was kind of a wild idea I had, but it was okay. But all right, next Veterans Day, what are we going to do? We'll shift fire and do something different.
Yeah.
But it's because the customers, so that's why every person in this matters, because they're essentially the ones making it possible. I'm providing the platform, but the customers are the ones actually making the financial impact of what it is. Right.
Yeah.
And I can't stress that it truly is like a team effort, and it does go a long way. And just, people telling their friends and family about it, that helped a lot. I think there was a little bit of a viral component of people were sharing it with their buddies and hey, this is kind of a cool thing. Hey, it's a veteran owned company. It seems pretty cool, check it out.
Yeah.
But the fact that we'll have Black Rifle in on it with us this year is really cool. Cause they have a megaphone too, you know what I mean? And it's bigger than ours. So that was part of it is, hey, we can amplify the impact, and hey, part of it is you guys can get a bigger reach than us. Right.
Yeah.
And just with some of their context and the way they've done things. So that's kind of cool. And I think it's also in the spirit of in the military, as we're wired to work together as a team.
Yeah.
Right. So the fact that I was calling Evan, he's former Green Beret, a couple soft guys, we're wired to all right, here's the problem. How do we work together to form a solution? So I'm hoping beyond this, this will be the second year doing it. Hey, what can this become? In next year, are there 6 or 7 brands that I bring in, and it's even bigger now? And I'm heading up to DC soon to meet with some folks, with the VA around. Hey, I just presented you with a case study of 30,000 veterans that hopefully, when the dust settles, their debt has been paid off. Are there some case studies we can pull from this that might show deficiencies in coverage that we can fix? And it's not, not meant to shame or, hey, you guys need to be better. But I just came from Denver, Matt Best and I, he's the other co-founder of Black Rifle.
Yeah.
Of the first batch of recipients this year, there was a woman on the list. Her debt was $341,000.
$341,000.
So Eric from Forgive Go called me. He's like, dude, you're not going to believe this. And I said, what? He's like, this is wild. We were going through the list of the 5 million in debt, and there's a woman on there for 341. So he got a hold of her. Gold Star spouse. Her husband was killed, roadside bomb. He was a Army infantry guy. He was up in the turret. you know, in a Humvee, was killed in Iraq in 06. She's an Army veteran herself.
Jesus.
They have two kids. She got in a horrific car accident. You know, I think at this point, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and was in, you know, had to get airlifted, had like 18 plates put in her face, was in the hospital for like 2 weeks, was in really rough shape. Well, when she got out, they didn't cover the bill. Her bill was $340-ish grand, right? So she's had this looming debt for so long, and you know, she kind of told us, because so we got to go out and we hand delivered her the letter.
No kidding.
And we made her open it, and she read it, and it said, like, thanks to, you know, the efforts of Black Rifle Coffee and Born Primitive, like, your debt of $341 is now zero. No action.
That is insane.
No action required. You know what I mean? And so we sat down and had a beer with her. I think she was drinking tequila, maybe wine. I don't remember. But
she was probably celebrating a little bit.
And it was a really cool, feel good moment. And we learned about her husband. They just had their 23-year wedding anniversary just that last week. So she was like, man, this has been a really rough week. It's a very emotional time. And she's like, you know, kind of said, like, she's had this bill kind of looming in the horizon. She's almost just pretending like it didn't exist. You know what I mean? But she was like, I was worried if I ever needed to like purchase if I sold my house or something, they would make me like take that to pay it off. Like, so that's just one story of the thousands of people that will benefit from this. Now, obviously that story is a little bit more amplified just because of this, you know, the kind of the perfect storm of like, you know, details around it.
Yeah. Did she ever say what the money came from, or why they didn't pay for it? Was she still active duty at the time or no?
No, she wasn't. But and this is where I need to get better educated on it. But like I feel like as a Gold Star spouse, aren't you under TRICARE like for life? Or
that's what I thought.
You know what I mean? So like that's why for phase 2 of this, my goal is, okay, we have this giant sample size. Let's go through it and try to find areas where the VA was deficient on a coverage, and let's take that in a hopefully concise and articulate manner and present it to the VA and say, hey, we did this kind of crazy thing off to the side. Like, you don't know who we are, but like, hey, could we put our heads together and figure out maybe how a Gold Star spouse whose husband was killed in Iraq, who was also a veteran herself, you know, wasn't covered on something that was totally beyond her control. You know what I mean? Because I would imagine there are likely are plenty of examples from the cohort where they could say, oh, actually, that wasn't how it's supposed to be. And a lot of it, like, because the people that I called from last year's batch, a lot of them were because like there was confusion of like whether it would be covered, and like so like they went to like the wrong hospital, but it's because like they called and like the person on the phone told them it was good, but then like they tried to submit the claim and it got denied. And then they're trying to fight it for 2 years, but you get a different person every time. And like then the person, you know, transfers you to the next person, and then they have no clue what you're talking about. So they transfer you to the next person. You've been on hold 3 hours, and then the phone disconnects. Yeah. And you eventually just throw your hands up and you're like, all right, well, maybe not yet, but eventually you'll have to get on the phone with the VA and you'll know exactly what I mean. And you're just like, you know, so hopefully it will give us the opportunity to like, let's get to the root of this, because in the conversations we were having with Black Rifle, and of course we're all big thinkers and big idea guys. Yeah. It was getting kicked around. Hey, what is the total amount of debt out there right now? Like in a 5-year period, like could 2 civilianly owned companies pay off the whole damn thing? Yeah. You know what I mean? And that was the idea. Hey, is that the 5-year plan? I don't know.
I don't know, but that's a lot,
but hey, if we can do 11 that last year and do 25 this year, you know, maybe it gets momentum, and then maybe you get like the private donors that are mega wealthy that say, hey, I'll throw in, you know, 20 million, I'll throw in 30, and before you know it, you're paying off hundreds of millions of dollars in debt. Yeah. And then maybe the head of the VA is like, hey, come up to my office, like, let's talk.
Let's see if we can like maybe get together.
You know what I mean? And so that's kind of, you know, I'm a big idea guy. I can't promise that that's obviously what's going to happen, but I hope this will create, you know, an impact and allow us to amplify the message a bit more, to have follow-on action to something that actually goes to the root of it. Because we can keep doing this every year and cut checks, and like you know, I love it, and it motivates me, and it's very fulfilling for me. It really is. But if we're only kind of putting a Band-Aid on the problem, like eventually, you know, like every year the debt is just going to get bigger and bigger. So like we're taking a little chunk out, and then it just regrows, and you know. Yeah. So I'm you know my type A personality goes to, okay, let's circumvent that. Let's continue to treat the symptoms, but let's go to the root of the problem. Yeah. And you know, hopefully we can get some connections up there. And I think obviously it's good, you know, there's good people up there. It's not like I'm not throwing shade on the organization. Yeah. But when something's that big, there's going to be inefficiencies, and that's why I think it can be done in a way of, hey, we're not trying to throw shade on you guys, but we have some real data and some hard case studies that we'd love for you guys to look at. Let's identify the point of failure. And maybe you guys can make some tweaks on the back end systems to make sure that this, thing doesn't happen again. You know what I mean? Or this girl in rural America doesn't get her claim denied because some woman on the phone or told her to go to that hospital, and then her 20 grand bill isn't covered just because she was doing what she was told. Yeah. You know what I mean? But then she has no means to, dispute it.
Yeah. Because she doesn't have the money to pay for a lawyer.
Nor the time, or she can't be on hold for 6 hours when she's at work and they keep disconnecting, all these things that you hear about. Yeah. So that's kind of what we're doing, man. So we're fired up, and appreciate the opportunity to just come on and obviously talk shop. We talked about way other stuff than this, but with what we've built with Born Primitive, it's been a lot of fun. We got 110 employees now, and over half of our employees are veterans, first responders, or the spouses of those individuals. So that's pretty cool.
That's awesome.
We try to live the ethos of what we're doing, and most recently with our tactical line, like, we're trying to make gear for guys that actually do the job, but also like for a brand that is like one of them and backs with them. You know what I mean? And that, to me, that was the disconnect, because like when we were getting issued our gear, like our loadout was all Patagonia, right? And it was like that was very ironic, because a lot of guys weren't privy to like maybe the politics of the corporation. But I was like, wait, we're wrecking Patagonia. They hate us. They hate them. Wait. So they got like a $200 million SOCOM contract, but like. But like they they did it through like an intermediary, like, so they wanted to have like an arm's length reach from like SOCOM and like the military. So it's like they took the contract, but they wouldn't affiliate. Like it was like, oh, we don't know what you're talking about, but like we'll take that. So like that planted a seed, when I was in, of like eventually I want to be able to make gear for like guys that buy the operator for the operator, but also with a brand that like is actually doing something beyond just making the apparel for them, to actually support, their communities. You know what I mean? And so that's why I do it with a little bit of a chip on my shoulder, because it makes me mad. And then there's other companies that I won't name, that are still in our space and have made hundreds of millions of dollars off of the war on terror and have not cut one check towards any community of ours ever. Yeah. Right. They go to SHOT Show and they throw big parties and they do this and that, and take guys to dinner, and that's about all you see. And it's like, hey guys, like, one, great job in the company you've built, because as one that's built one myself, mad respect for the craft and like what that took. Yeah. But hey, you guys have this massive platform you're sitting on, and you're not doing a damn thing about the people that are the reason you exist. Yeah. Maybe I'm a little different in how I look at it, but to me, that was always something that was a little bit of a motivator. And if you get enough beers in me, I'll be way more vocal about my thoughts on that.
Oh, sure.
But I do think it's okay to call that out, because like the CFOs of those companies should look at their bottom line and say, man, maybe this guy's got a point. Yeah. Wait, we just got a $200 million contract with Uncle Sam, and we made $50 million on that, and you're telling me at the end of the year we can't cut a check to help some families of the guys who were wearing our gear that died overseas, that are now their kid can't go to college. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, hey, maybe there's a a moral obligation to maybe not buy your 8th house in Malibu, and maybe carve out some of that money to help others. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think, dude, I think what this podcast is going to help for sure. Like, I think that talking to people and like showing, hey, look, they're, encourage other people to do good things for other people. Yeah. I think that's one of the best things that you can do as a leader in general, is leading by example. Right. Yeah. And that's what Evan Hafer and Black Rifle and all those guys over there, Matt Best, that's what a lot of us are trying to do. I don't know if I do a good job of it. I can't really tell if I do a good job. Other people can make that decision for themselves. But I think that the best way to lead people is by example. And if you're leading by example, by being like, I'm going to personally try to do everything I can to help the veteran space, help veteran community, help active duty service members, law enforcement, all that stuff. And I would encourage you, as people that are part of the same community, to do the same. That's the best that you can do. You can't force them to do it. Free country, do what you want, right? But I do think that, I think encouraging people to help each other in this community is a good thing, and we should definitely continue to do that, because at the end of the day, like I said, nobody nobody hates on vets and active duty and first responders more than that community, but nobody cares about that community more than they do as well, because you have a vested interest. That's your family. That's your brothers and sisters, right? And I think that is something to be admired, that is different about this community than a lot of other ones. Because like, I don't know if archaeologists have a community. I bet they do.
They probably do,
but they definitely don't do things with their community the way that we do with ours.
Yes,
or people that are florists or folks that are in like music. They don't. I don't know if they do the same kind of thing as we do for our community. Just because it's not, the experiences that they have that bring them to the place of success in that industry is different than the experiences and the perspectives that folks in ours go through or have. And so I think that's a super valuable part about being in this tribe. And like, normally I think tribalism is kind of like ruining the country in some aspects, but I think this is one of those tribal situations that is, I think, valuable. And we can use it for good, and we should, because if you can do something, you should, which is why I'm grateful that you reached out to me to even be a part of this and thought of me. I didn't I tried to do my own stuff like with different nonprofits and different organizations that work in the philanthropy space. And I've done a bunch of different things with a bunch of like folks that are some small, some big. And I always get great levels of satisfaction out of doing something that's good for somebody else to help other people, because, like, if not me, who, and sometimes these people may not have anybody else they can rely on, like, for example, we helped, Hunter 7 Foundation do a lot of great stuff. I know you
great
know
organization.
Yeah, awesome people. Chelsea over there and her husband and their whole team, Chachi, all these guys, man, they're awesome human beings. And we've done a lot of really cool things together. We've been able to help a lot of people. And I always like ask them like for help whenever like I get people that send me information about a case of some kind that's going on. And I'm like, I have no bandwidth for things. They have a whole infrastructure set up for it. I'm like, here, can you guys vet this, figure out what's going on, figure out a way if we can like set up a donor drive. I'll help share it. I'll help get the word out. I'll do whatever I need to do to help this out. Can you guys help me with this? Because like I can depend on them to put this stuff together. And like, I don't have the bandwidth to do what you guys are doing with all the back end logistics and stuff and networking that needs to happen to get this to even come to fruition. But I do have the ability to like get the word out there, and I want to help, So I think that was one of the reasons why I was interested in doing this, is because like I want to help. This sounded like I was like, oh, paying off medical bills. I know a lot of people that are having problem with medical bills right now. Yeah. And not to mention, I work with the Black Rifle guys too. We do a bunch of different stuff together.
Oh, cool.
They're all awesome folks. Been able to kind of get to know them a little bit more over the years. I drink their coffee. I own some of their stock. You know what I mean? So
me as well.
Oh, do you? Okay. So good. Yeah, we're
on
in the
both.
Same,
Yeah,
we're in the same boat. And I mean, I don't really, I don't really see a problem with all of us wanting to come together for, solving a common problem that we have. I think there's a lot of value in that, and we should encourage other people to do the same. So I'm grateful that you had the time to come out of your busy carve out of your busy schedule to come all the way here from Virginia Beach and come do this podcast. And you said one more time, you said it was November 9th through the 11th?
No, 7th through the 11th.
7th,
yeah,
okay.
So depending on when this airs, the 7th is a Friday, Veterans Day is the 11th, that's a Tuesday. So Friday through Tuesday, everything on the site is fair game. It's
okay.
gonna be, full out sprint. So,
And what percentage is going towards this?
100% of profits.
100% of profits.
Yeah, until we reach the goal. So hopefully we get there. So head to the site, get your lady something, get some stuff. We have so much stuff for men and women. So for anyone listening, don't think we're definitely not a dude brand. We're very, you
got men's and women's of everything, whether tactical apparel and just regular dress apparel.
Exactly.
By the way, that's a nice shirt. I probably have to get me a little
this
button
is from
down.
our Campfire collection. Every October we launch it's my favorite collection here. It's Campfire. So it's like flannels and denim jackets and jeans and and all of our stuff stretches. So that's like my one thing. I'm like, it has to stretch.
Yeah, because when you get a pump on, you get a little bit bigger,
so it's super comfortable and functional. But I appreciate you giving me the platform. And that was part of the reason why I reached out to you is, of course, we're trying to amplify the message, but I think you've done a really good job of leveraging your platform for good. And I've seen you promote like, hey, that's that GoFundMe for, that thing that happened with that family. And I think what a lot of people don't realize is like, you've put a lot of work into building your platform, and that there's a value to that. You know what I mean? And I think you've done a really good job. And I've also think you've done a really good job just being a voice for the veteran community, because I Instagram has me figured out because I watch pretty much all of your videos.
Do you really?
Because you are the source of a lot of my news.
No
because
kidding.
I see it before I turn the TV on, right? So so that's one really cool. I know we talked off the air of like the work that goes into that. So mad respect. I know that doesn't happen overnight. I don't know how many takes some of those videos take, because I'm sure some of them you're like, you get right to the end and you nailed it, and then you screw up one thing, you got to rerun it.
Oh,
you know what I mean? And it's 5 o'clock in the morning, and you know what I mean. So I appreciate that, but also I think the way you deliver it in articulate, but also in a way that isn't really taking sides, but just kind of puts the facts out and just says, hey, you draw your own conclusions here.
Yeah.
So it's super cool thing, man. I don't know how you stumbled upon like that type of content, but
I don't know. I'm an idiot, and I just fell into it.
Yeah,
probably.
yeah. Maybe it was off the cuff where you're just like, hey, I just saw this thing. What do you guys think about it? And little by little. So mad respect. It's funny how because the same thing with Born Primitive. Like I started with this weird pair of compression shorts, and it just becomes something you never would have thought. And I think you're going to experience that. You're already experiencing that, I would think, with your journey thus far. But I think if you look out 5 years from where you are now, you're going to look back and go, holy, I can't believe, you never would have thought XYZ would have happened.
Yeah.
But you're on that path. So, mad respect. And obviously, as an active duty service member, I can relate to a lot of what you've done as far as the side hustle and the sacrifice it takes, and the early mornings and the late nights and the emails and all of that. Mine was less content related. Mine was more like the X's and the O's of the back end of the business, which is never the sexy stuff.
Yeah.
And that's the stuff that no one ever sees. And to your point earlier of like the whole like, oh, must be nice. Like that really gets me fired up, because because as you know, like it's like you just want to shake your head. And you have no fucking idea.
You have no idea how miserable some days could be.
As I try to do my helmet with tweezers in a bumpy Jeep going down the 5, and I'm like, why am I doing this?
And it's all self-inflicted, dude. It's all self-induced friction. You know what I'm saying? Like I did this to myself, so I have to accept the consequences. I can't complain about it to anybody, because first off, nobody cares. Second off, it's like, dude, you made the decision yourself. So you have to feel the consequences for your actions, whether those consequences are good or bad. You know what I mean? But I really appreciate that I didn't realize you even like knew who I was for the longest time.
Dude, I've been watching your videos forever. That's why. So
That's awesome,
so that's
man.
why. And I think I DM'd you, and I was like, oh, there's no way he's going to see this. But maybe because I got the blue check mark, maybe it goes to the top or something. But I think you immediately responded and were like, hey, dude, it sounds pretty cool. Like, let's link up.
Yeah.
But no, like legit, I've been, the videos, because again, it's a news source.
Yeah.
Because you've already obviously done your research, and then you put it out. I'm like, oh, sweet. Well, now I don't have to learn about that, because he just told me about it. You know what I mean? Or like especially it's more a lot of times more military related, of course.
Yeah.
And I gravitate towards that. But no, it's been cool, man. And I think like, as I've grown this, and you can probably relate to this, it's like you will always be like this, I think. Whereas
I think so.
It's a gas. It fills any space it's given, right? And we would always joke about that with mission planning. It's like if we're doing a mission planning thing and we have 72 hours to plan it, we will be changing the last slide 2 minutes before we go live on hour 72. But hey, if you just say, hey, plan this in 45 minutes, like it's gonna take 44 minutes and 59 seconds. Right. And it's probably gonna be a similar product. But I think, it's kind of leverage the analogy. You're someone that's gonna be making the most of every hour of the day, and you're gonna be pursuing or trying to conquer something and trying to build something. And I went through a phase recently where I was like, oh man, I've been burning the candle at both ends. Like I need to reel it in a little bit, and like I need to be a little bit more balanced. So like when I wake up in the morning, where I used to do, I'd open up the computer, like crush emails for like 2 hours.
Emails,
yeah, exactly, yeah, crush
emails.
Yeah, I'm trying to make it sound cool. It's not. And then I would get the daughter ready for school and then go straight to the gym and then, go to work and then, open up the laptop later. It was always working, right? And I realized, okay, I need to be more balanced. So, I would wake up and I would, do some breathing exercises and I would, do the meditation, and sometimes I would do cold tub sauna, and all these things are good things. But it was unnatural to me because I was anxious, because by the time I got to work, I was used to having done 2 to 2.5 hours before I even got to the office. And now I'm just getting started. And like, I got a million emails I got to respond to before I even could get to my stuff. And it was just making me anxious. And I kind of came to the realization of, hey, dude, you're wired for this shit. You love it. You sick fuck. Like, don't deny who you are. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you don't need to go, like, in all the wellness stuff is good. I have the sauna and the cold tub, but it doesn't need to be like, all right, you're not allowed to open up your laptop at 05:30 because, like, oh, you might get burnt out. Yeah. It's like, no, I actually, in a way, love this. And, so you I guess what I'm getting is like, embrace that, because it can be a curse, but it's also like a blessing at the same time.
Yeah.
The curse is that if you can ever turn it off, it's like, what is all the work for if you can ever actually chill?
Yeah.
But the blessing is you can, build abundance and surplus in your life to allow you to do other things for other people and support your family, do all these things. So I throw that out there as maybe words of wisdom a couple years ahead of you in the entrepreneurial journey, as you might get to that crossroad of like, man, do I need to tone it down a little bit? And if you do, that's fine. But if it's unnatural, dude, just lean into it.
My one problem is I just need to make sure I'm getting enough sleep.
Yeah.
Because I will sacrifice sleep for productivity, which is not good, because I've gotten to a point where like I start falling apart if I don't get enough sleep. You know what I mean? So that's my one thing. As long as I get enough sleep, I'm cool with working all day long. Don't care.
I'm same way, man. Like, I hear the guys that are like, oh, you only need 5 hours a night. Dude, if I get 5 hours, I'm leaning on coffee. You know what I mean?
I'm cooked.
Yeah. So I'm like, man, you guys are better than me. So like, that's the one thing. I've always been the good on the sleep thing.
Yeah.
But between, that 16-hour day, like, it's game on.
Yeah.
So that was like a recent realization that I had, because I was like, man, I just feel off. Like, and I was like, well, maybe, like, do you need to be like getting the natural sunlight and, having your feet touch the grass and all that, like, because the Gary Breckers of the world, you start reading all this stuff and you're like, oh, I need to be more balanced. Like, and then I'll like it's like, it just wasn't natural. Yeah. Now, I still try to incorporate that stuff. Like, I'll still go jump in the cold tub, but it doesn't need to be a 30-minute ordeal. Yeah. I don't need to do 10 minutes of breathing before I get in to warm up my diaphragm and do this. And like, I can just, hey, put on some Metallica, get your ass in there, do your 6 minutes, and get out and go get your coffee and fire up the computer.
Ooh, that's coffee.
That's a 12-minute evolution versus what would have been like, by the time I'm opening up, I've done this, I've done that. It's like I've been an hour and 20 minutes, and then I only have 20 minutes before I got to wake up my daughter and this and that. You know what I mean? It's just a way different. So the output's the same, but it's just, I don't know.
I get what you're saying. You're like trying to figure out like, how can I still get to this point and get the things done that I wanted to get done typically, but just shorten it a little bit or compress it a little bit. So the one thing for me in the mornings is I usually, I shave my face, because I usually get up at 4:30. I get up, I shave my face, go downstairs, I cook 5 eggs, and I microwave a black cup of coffee, and then I'll eat, and I'll have some like blueberries and some strawberries. I'll eat my 5 eggs real quick. And then my like morning me time is like drinking that black cup of coffee. I'm just like, that is my favorite. I don't know what it is.
It is.
That is my favorite part of the day. Like, I'm not talking to anybody. I'm not looking at my phone, not on my laptop, not on my computer. I'm just sitting there staring at my cat, just drinking a black cup of coffee, just like petting the cat a little bit. You know what I mean? Just drinking it, and then waking up naturally. And then we get right going. We say, okay, let's find out what stories are big right now, what's hitting, what's happening, what's going on around the world. Make usually 5 short videos every morning.
Wow.
And then that's usually where I limit myself to 5.
That's a lot.
And I'll usually work until about 7:30, 7:45, something like that. And then I leave, I go to work, I get to the office, I work until usually lunch, go home at lunch, cook some lunch. If I can get any work done before I need to be back to the office, I'll get a little bit of work done. And then I go back to the office, work the rest of the day, leave the office, go straight to the gym, work out, come home. Usually do, some post-gym stuff, whatever, post-gym care, shower, get back to work the rest of the night until it's time for bed, and limiting myself to going to bed at an early time. That's the hard part because I will work later
Yeah.
and later and later
Yeah.
if I have, because I can always find stuff to do. I
course.
can always be
Yeah.
like scheduling posts out, working on thumbnails, making new short videos,
Mm-hmm.
covering news stories that didn't get covered earlier in the day. But just like having to be like, okay, or streaming for too long. Cause like one of the things I've been getting into with my brother is streaming. Like I'll do like, like last night I did a couple of hours of like current event stuff, chop those up into some long videos, post on one of the long form channels. And then after that, we streamed like Helldivers 2, play video games. That's another therapy for me. Like kind of disconnect from everything and do this. Gym doesn't ever get canceled or moved around for anything.
It's a non-negotiable.
That's a non-negotiable for me.
Yep. That's good.
I will never negotiate that. I can negotiate sleep a little bit here and there if I have to because like bandwidth and workload. But the gym is a non-negotiable because that keeps my mind right. And that's one of the things I think is so great about the brand you've built is it's kind of centered, focused on like fitness and stuff. That was like fitness is my what I kind of wanted to start doing. And then I kind of found out like I like teaching people things. I like learning things. I like, raising awareness about stuff. And I kind of like figured out, okay, current events, current affairs, stuff like that. Like at least I'm providing something of value rather than just like, hey, here's a really cool picture of me in a tight tank top. Like, you know what I mean? Because like eventually I'm gonna be old one day. I'm not gonna be an attractive old man. I'm just gonna be an old man like every other old man. But I can still provide things of value, like teaching people about stuff or like teaching people about technology or like, hey, this thing happened. Maybe you didn't know about. Here's some like unfiltered, unbiased, like information that you can consume and do what you want with, decide how you feel about it. I'm not going to tell you how to feel about it because there's enough people out there trying to do that. I might maybe inject an opinion once in a while, but it's very rare. But yeah, either way, man, like that's one of the big things I kind of wrestle with is like my schedule day to day and anybody who's super busy like you or I, you're probably busier than I am because you're running like a big business and you have a bunch of over 100 employees. That's a lot to manage. I'll get there eventually, maybe have some employees one day. That's what I'm hoping for because I do want to be able to like delegate certain things to other people because I have a bunch of stuff I want to do. I don't have time in the day for. Of course. So I have to figure out what actually takes priority and have to figure that out. But you always see these videos of like entrepreneurs that are like trying to talk about like the tech bro entrepreneurs that are like talking about how their daily routine is. They're like, I sleep 2 hours. I go outside and I discharge into the grass by putting my bare feet in the grass while I'm on my laptop checking my stuff. I'm getting the sunlight from the sun while I'm checking my emails. I'm like triple and multi and quadruple tasking while I'm doing things. It's just that's what it made me think about. But it's like because like instead of doing one thing and then another thing and another thing, they try to combine everything all into one thing. And it's just like kind of interesting. Red light therapy usually like there's always like a guy that's got a sauna with a red light inside of it, so he's getting his red light therapy while he's doing the sauna.
That's me.
Yeah, which is great. Like if you could do it, dual, dude. I'm all about like dual tasking.
It can get over the top, and
it can get over.
It's like, all right, just don't overthink it, guys. Back to the basics. You know what I mean? Like just
don't overthink it.
Yeah, man. Well, thanks so much for having me, and again, mad respect for. Here we are on a Saturday. This is your weekend where you should be off from being active duty, and you're working. So a lot of respect, and thanks for giving me the opportunity to come talk about what we're doing, and hopefully we can get people to come out and support the cause. And
again, it's the 7th of November through the 11th of November.
It'll end at midnight on the 11th, which is Tuesday. That's Veterans Day.
Okay. What's the website? It's just bornprimitive.com?
Yeah, bornprimitive.com, and then Black Rifles, blackriflecoffeecompany.com.
Yep.
or just Google it if you.
Black Rifle Coffee. You can Google it easy. Come up.
And everything on the site for that 5-day window is fair game.
Did Evan say the same thing, that it's all the profits from all the
online.
merch?
Yes, we're doing the exact same thing.
Okay.
We're mirroring it. So we're hopefully going to both do 12.5 to make 25 million.
That's going to be sick.
So we're fired up. Obviously, as we record this, I don't know what the response is yet, but by the time this airs, probably we'll be in it.
We're going to be in the thick of it.
And hopefully I'll get up to New York and do a piece with Fox News with Evan or Matt,
nice.
Which will be cool. That really helps, and some other media opportunities. And obviously the goal there is just to amplify the message and get it out so people have the opportunity to support. And then, we got people like you that are just helping to push the cause, which goes a long way, particularly those that speak to the veteran community, right?
Yeah.
Because this is for us, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? So obviously your audience is very in line with that effort.
Yeah.
But so we'll see, man. Hopefully this is the beginning of something that becomes a lot bigger.
Yeah.
But we gotta get this one done first. So
Yeah, I hope so too, man. I think what you guys are doing is great. I think this is an awesome initiative, an awesome idea, and sometimes the good idea fairy does actually make really good ideas. You know what I mean?
I've had some bad ones, that's for sure.
I mean, I have too, for sure. But this is definitely, I love this one. So, so again, any last minute parting things for the folks out there that you might want to plug just before we cut, just so that way, like any like last minute things for the initiative, like they just need to buy. Just buying merch on the website, and then also Black Rifle's doing it as well. So bornprimitive.com, blackriflecoffee.com. Anything else that any other things that we need to know for it?
No, I would say just if you liked what we talked about as far as like the effort, like, you know, we'd love it if you could tell your friends and family, you know what I mean? Like word of mouth is huge for this. That's why last year it got so big.
Yeah. So share this with all your friends.
Yeah, if you can. Hey, if you need some guilt-free reasons to shop, and I would say if you're a guy, you can't get in trouble with your significant other if you buy around this time, because you can just be like, babe, it was for a good cause.
It's for a good cause, yeah.
And same thing if you're a girl, you can say that to your man.
Exactly.
It's like, yeah, well,
it's for a good cause.
I got 5 pairs of leggings, but it was for a good cause, right?
Yeah.
So use that excuse if you have to.
Yeah.
You can say Bear said it. It's good.
There we go. You can blame him. You can blame him. So, all right. Well, hey, dude, I appreciate it again. Thanks for coming down here. Thanks for coming way out of the way to come film this, and I'm looking forward to dropping this stuff and seeing what the total amount you guys raise. I hope it blows that 25 million out of the water.
I hope so.
I hope so, man.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks, man.
Appreciate it, brother.
Heck yeah.
Thanks a lot.